In the heart of Gallia, a city square cries out for royal blood. A figure in immaculate armor gives a simple, chilling order. Power crackles from his very being, a storm contained within a man. The energy intensifies, arcing toward the instrument of death. His magic imbues the blade, preparing it for its grim task. Another life is extinguished, just one more, out of nearly 100. With another snap of his fingers, the count rises, relentless and cold. The fallen noble's last thoughts are of a revolution that failed. His betrayal did not come from an enemy, but from his own ranks. He addresses the enraged crowd, a liberator standing atop a heap of corpses. He proclaims the end of an era of oppression and in its place promises an age of liberation. He steps forward. His presence dominates the stage. The crowd roars in approval. Their shouts echo throughout the square. Their faces are twisted with rage, demanding blood and fire. From the shadows emerges another figure with a different perspective. He is bound by a powerful magic, a prisoner of this new order. His eyes hold a bitter truth. The crowd is being manipulated. This is Isaac Quincy, the king's first counselor, who is having a very bad day. He's a captive of the very people who claim to be liberators. Isaac reveals that these liberators are actually a facade for a single noble family. The Satches, the true tyrants who have pulled the strings for centuries. They have whipped the common people into a revolutionary frenzy, using the chaos as a pretext to massacre all their opponents. And now, the leader prepares the crowd for his final, dramatic act. He presents his grand trophy, the captured king and his royal council. But Isaac knows the crown is nothing more than an accessory for their new puppet ruler. The leader then fans the flames with a shocking accusation. He claims the royals allied themselves with demons, which always excites the crowd, sacrificing thousands of their own people for a thirst for power. The leader condemns the royals, his voice booming over the frenzied square. But Isaac knows the truth, his eyes burning with the knowledge of their lies. The clandestine meetings with demons were nothing more than a convenient fiction, the perfect excuse to deliver the royal council to the bloodthirsty mob. Yet a smile spreads across Isaac's face. They failed to capture the kingdom's secret weapon. A captive companion, Elizabeth, asks if their last hope will even come. Isaac is certain, insisting that their ally is hidden somewhere among the crowd. A guard shoves him forward, silencing any further whispers of rebellion. The leader laments the waste because, in addition to being a tyrant, he is a depraved man. He grabs Elizabeth's face and tells her she only has a few minutes left to live. The leader makes a vile suggestion for her final moments, but a voice cuts through the tension, demanding that he let her go. He shoves Elizabeth aside, continuing to mock his captives with cruel words. And so the mysterious newcomer's patience has run out. The leader tries to call his soldiers, but his order is interrupted. A storm of golden lightning erupts, sweeping everyone off the platform. The tyrant is caught in the blast. His helmet cracks under the pressure. His men realize, horrified, that their prisoner is breaking the restriction amulet. The guards rush to reinforce the spell. Their only plan is to use more magic. The red-haired man strains, fighting against the renewed power of his bindings. He realizes the magical amulet is specifically designed to inhibit his power. The guards close in, and their leader demands he cease his futile struggle. But a confident smile spreads across his face as he provokes them. He tells them their time is up because someone else is about to arrive. His thoughts turn to Silas Montfort, his best friend and the strongest of them all. We see a flashback to their academy days, where their powers first began to blossom. Silas's life shattered when the Saxe family ordered the murder of his parents. United by a common enemy, they became brothers in arms, fighting their way through together. Their shared goal was to end tyranny by dismantling it from within, but their noble mission was cut short by a devastating betrayal. The flashback ends with their capture, surrounded and overwhelmed by enemy knights. But his thoughts remain on Silas, who is still free and whose true power remains a secret to their enemies. Back in the present, the leader turns his attention to the next victim on his list. He presents another member of the king's council to the bloodthirsty crowd, portraying him as a tyrant who brought only hunger and ruin to the kingdom. And the next head on the block is none other than Isaac Quincy's. Isaac remains defiant. His magical bindings glow as he prepares for what is to come. He knows he only has to hold out a little longer. Silas will arrive any moment. The leader asks if he has any last words, but Isaac only smirks with superiority and tells him not to be so sure of himself. He reveals his fatal mistake. They failed to capture the strongest of them all, Silas. The leader pauses. The name Silas Montfort resonates inside his helmet. The red-haired captive's eyes go wide, reflecting the image of an armed man. He removes his helmet, revealing the face of their last hope, Silas Montfort. His friend's world crumbles. His mind refuses to accept the impossible truth. But Silas only smiles cynically, twisting their shared history into a cruel joke. Even Isaac is stunned as Silas casually dismisses the desperate faith they had in him. He admits that he was always following his plan just for a different team. His eyes are cold as he reveals his motive. The Satches were more convincing. He puts his helmet back on, becoming the faceless tyrant they fought against. His former brother-in-arms can only stare, shattered by the ultimate betrayal. The captive's mind flashes back, recalling their 20-year bond. They were brothers in arms, resting after another hard-won battle. But in the present, Silas's smile is cold and empty. He tells his old friend not to take it personally. Business is business, and with that, he orders his former brother to be taken to the guillotine. The captive finally screams his name, feeling the betrayal sink in like a knife. He realizes that Silas alone has doomed all their comrades. His pain instantly transforms into pure, absolute rage. Silas remains impassive, a monument to his own treachery. Driven by fury, the captive unleashes a wave of raw, destructive power. A single point of burning hatred reflects in his eye. The platform erupts as his rage takes on a monstrous form. He roars, his face twisted with pain and wild, unleashed power. The shockwave tears through the stage, sending bodies flying through the air. The guards scream in disbelief as he breaks his bindings. Free at last, he lunges forward with murderous intent. A knight lowers his sword, ready to end the massacre, but the blade stops dead just inches from its target. His eyes burn with a defiance bordering on madness. He catches the steel sword with his teeth, which is not very good for his dental health. He shatters the steel blade with a single, furious bite. Silas orders his soldiers to subdue the rampaging captive, but he moves like a ghost, taking them down in a red flash. The order changes from capture to kill as the archers take aim. His eyes burn with a cold fire, all emotion replaced by vengeance. He summons a whip of pure energy, deflecting the hail of arrows with ease. His fury manifests, taking the shape of a spectral beast. The creature strikes with force, sweeping away everything in its path. He stands amidst the chaos, a whirlwind of magic and fury. Panicked, the guards rush to reinforce the inhibition spell. Finally, the guards manage to surround him, and their magical circles light up. He screams his anguish, reminding Silas of the broken brotherhood between them. But Silas remains completely impassive, deciding it's time to end this little drama. The combined weight of their spells forces the captive to his knees. Silas decides to take matters into his own hands, weaving a powerful spell. A huge golden sigil erupts beneath his former friend, amplifying the bindings. The spell falls with immense force, pinning him to the wooden stage. He struggles against the overwhelming pressure, his body screaming in protest. Silas reflects that if you want a job done right, you have to do it yourself. The new golden bindings immobilize him completely, leaving him utterly defenseless. Silas grabs his former friend, as the golden sigil burns with absolute power. He effortlessly hurls him across the stage like a broken toy in the hands of a new tyrant, forced toward the guillotine. He demands to know why he was betrayed. Silas walks away, coldly assuring him that he did nothing wrong. He was just a pawn in a much larger, more ruthless game. A pawn, Silas clarifies, that had finally outlived its usefulness. With the familiar, chilling snap of his fingers, the final order is given. The blade falls in an instant, ending the life of a betrayed hero. His last thoughts are of disbelief as his world fades into darkness. A final silent protest against an end he never saw coming. But his spirit refuses to be extinguished, igniting one last spark in the void. His eyes snap open, finding himself not in oblivion, but in a completely different place. He awakens in a world of fire and chaos, wondering if this is his final judgment. He stumbles through hell, remembering the purpose of his life, to fight against tyranny. A bitter laugh escapes him. His reward for being a hero is a one-way ticket to hell. Chaos swirls around him as bodies fall and buildings burn to the ground. He is thrown to the ground, completely overwhelmed by the nightmare scene. He falls to his knees, insisting he does not deserve this cruel fate. A memory cuts through the noise, a voice warning Isaac to take cover during an attack. But he realizes this is not just hell, it is the destruction of his own village. He recognizes the attacker's armor, Count Ravel's eastern faction. A desperate voice shouts at him, trying to snap him out of his trance. But young Isaac is paralyzed, frozen before the horror unfolding around him. He remembers the boy's name, Gavin, his best childhood friend. A friend he lost 20 years ago on this very night. In the memory, Gavin tries to drag him away from the carnage, but an armored hand pulls his friend back into the fray. Gavin is thrown against a wall with brutal, relentless force. He gasps in pain, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. His eyes widen, filled with absolute terror at the figure standing before him. An armored giant steps forward, his his shadow covering the terrified boy. He raises a huge axe, declaring that this is the fate of all who defy Count Ravel. Our hero watches in horror, the name of his lost friend escaping in a pained whisper. But as the blade descends, a figure finally breaks free from its paralysis. It snatches a fallen shield from the ground, ready to change the past. In a flash of movement, he intercepts the fatal blow meant for Gavin. The knight stops, surprised by this sudden, impossible intervention. Our hero follows through and punches the soldier's breastplate with his fist. The armored giant staggers back from the unexpected force but looks at his own hand, wondering why his attack felt so weak. He looks at his hands as a horrible revelation dawns on him. His powers are gone. The knight grabs him by the hair, mockingly praising his acceptable technique. He laments that such insolence means our hero will not live to become a soldier. But our hero is not listening. A thought crosses his mind fleetingly about his face. He touches his cheek, confirming the impossible. The scar he has had for years is gone. A familiar voice shouts at a young Isaac Quincy to run for his life. The knight ignores the boy and brings his massive axe down on his current target. Without magic and without strength, our hero braces for an end he cannot avoid. But at the very last possible second, a hand intercepts the descending blade. The axe stops dead, caught by an invisible figure with impossible force. The mysterious savior struggles, realizing he must rely on technique, not strength. The armored giant seems unimpressed by this last-minute rescue attempt. He sneers at the effort, pushing down with overwhelming brutal force. The knight promises a grim end as the swordsman strains against the blade. But a memory fleetingly crosses the swordsman's mind, a key piece of information. He remembers a fatal flaw in the armor's design, a weak point at the neck. In a fraction of a second, he pivots on his heel, preparing to turn the tables. He dodges under the massive swing, letting the knight's momentum carry the attack off course. His eyes narrow with lethal tension as the perfect opening presents itself, and his sword strikes true, hitting the vulnerable gap with a sickening crunch. The mysterious swordsman urges the boy to take a weapon and fight. He reflects on his 2 decades of battlefield experience and proves that all that training has not been in vain. The knight's blood splatters the swordsman's sword blade. He stands over the fallen soldier, a whirlwind of lethal movement. His eyes are cold and focused, a seasoned killer in his element. Gavin, completely stunned, asks Isaac where he learned such incredible moves. Our hero, still in Isaac's body, can only stare, not knowing how to explain any of this. A hand extends, sharply pulling him back to the present moment. It is Gavin, alive and smiling, and our hero is overwhelmed. Gavin simply assumes his friend is in shock from the brutal fight, but our hero's mind is racing, accepting the impossible truth. Somehow he has traveled 20 years into the past. His last memory is of the scaffold, bound by Silas's golden magic. He remembers the fall of the blade at the moment of his execution. A hand on his shoulder snaps him out of his grim memory. Gavin urges him to move, reminding him that their families are in danger. But the chaos of the past still rages around him. Gavin can only watch in horror as his home is destroyed. Our hero realizes that he has returned to the day his life's crusade began. He remembers the original timeline, the day his best friend was cut down. It was also the day he lost his parents, a memory seared into his soul. But Gavin's desperate cry pulls him back to the present chaos. He does not know how or why he has been sent back to this nightmare, but the only thing that matters now is to rewrite this bloody story. Driven by a second chance, he runs toward the danger. He remembers the man he was, one of the most powerful warriors in Galia. Now he is back in his teenage body, which is a serious downgrade, a time before his powers awakened, before he had even seen the academy. At this moment, he is nothing more than a peasant boy with nothing but his wits and his memories. Bolt of golden energy strikes the ground with devastating force. But our hero's eyes are sharp, his instincts honed by years of war. He pushes Gavin to safety just as the street erupts in a shower of sparks. Shoving his friend aside, he steps between Gavin and the danger. Peering out from their hiding spot, he realizes they are facing a powerful noble. This is Sebald, the Count's son, who radiates pure destructive energy. A couple of villagers plead for their home, their only possession in the world. But Sebald only mocks them, clearly enjoying their desperation. He offers them a simple and terrifying choice regarding their home. If they are not willing to surrender it, he will simply burn them alive inside because he is a great guy. With a brutal kick, Sebald hurls the helpless couple into the flames. Our hero recognizes the man, remembering how he massacred that family in the original timeline. But he is powerless, the mind of a warrior trapped in a body that cannot defend itself. Thinking quickly, Isaac tells Gavin they need to escape to his house via the rooftops. The two boys sprint across the tiles, desperate to stay out of sight, but their escape route is blocked by a patrol of the Count's soldiers. He realizes with growing horror that they have already reached his house. Gavin panics, insisting they need to seek help rather than charging in headlong. But Isaac's eyes are cold and calculating. His mind is already forming a plan. He assesses the threat, simple foot soldiers, not nobles using magic. He may have lost his powers, but his 20 years of battlefield memories are very much intact. Without a moment's hesitation, he lands on the roof of his childhood home. He locates his entry point, a window on the upper floor. Isaac crashes through the glass, making a rather dramatic entrance. His eyes lock onto the scene inside. His mother is being held by a soldier. He quickly counts the hostiles as one of them takes his mother's life, strangling her. His father rushes in, desperately trying to free his wife from the soldier's grip. A third soldier turns around, completely surprised by the boy who just came through the window. Isaac lands a powerful kick, stunning the soldier who had ordered them to deal with him. Apparently, peasants are not supposed to fight back. He grabs the nearest weapon he finds, a simple kitchen knife. The soldier sneers, challenging the peasant boy to even try to defend himself. But Isaac's blade finds the gap in the armor with deadly, experienced precision. One down, two to go. His expression is that of a seasoned killer, not a child. The remaining soldiers stare at him in disbelief. Apparently, they are not used to their food fighting back. Without wasting time, Isaac lunges toward the next target, a blur of motion. The soldier draws his sword, ready to face the boy's charge. The kitchen knife clashes against steel, a testament to Isaac's superior skill. But his combat instincts warn him of an attack from behind. The third soldier moves in for the kill, thinking he has the boy cornered. Caught between two swords, Isaac finds himself in a deadly stalemate. Thinking fast, Isaac uses the soldier's body as a brace to propel himself upward. He launches into the air, letting the two soldiers' attacks collide with each other. Unable to stop his momentum, the soldier behind cuts down his own comrade. He lands behind the last soldier, pressing the kitchen knife against his throat. A cold smile crosses his face as he tells the man that today is his lucky day. He never dreamed he would see his family alive and safe again, and with a single decisive slash, he eliminates the threat permanently. The second soldier finally collapses, a victim of his own team's incompetence. His family screams his name, a mix of surprise and immense relief. He embraces them, overwhelmed by a reunion he had been waiting 20 years for. Isaac's father is understandably confused about where his son learned to fight like a seasoned assassin. Isaac dodges the question because "I'm a time traveler" is a difficult conversation to have in the middle of a massacre. He takes command and tells his family their only chance is to run into the forest. Suddenly, a crucial piece of information from his past life surfaces in his mind. He remembers that the only survivors of the original massacre were those who fled into the forest. Spotting Gavin, he quickly tells his friend to go with them to safety. He assures Gavin that his parents are already safe since his house is right at the edge of the forest. But a grim memory returns. Although Gavin's parents survived, Gavin himself did not. He makes a silent promise that his friend will make it home. The small group runs toward the tree line, leaving the burning chaos of their village behind. Isaac's eyes burn with determination. He has a second chance, and he is not going to waste it. They arrive at a small survivor camp, a brief moment of peace amidst the chaos. Isaac tells his family to wait there while he scouts ahead. Gavin is confused by his friend's sudden, uncharacteristic leadership, but the other survivors suddenly feel weak. Their vision blurs, the adrenaline finally fades, and Isaac's teenage body can take no more. He collapses into unconsciousness. The horrors of the day finally catch up to him. His mind returns to the scaffold, to the moment of his ultimate failure. He remembers his comrades, bound and helpless just like him, and he remembers Silas's last cruel words, branding him a useless pawn. The blade falls, a brutal and definitive end to his first life. Silas's voice echoes in his mind, a cruel farewell to his oldest friend. But it is Gavin's desperate cry that brings him back to the present. He awakens with the soft light filtering through the forest canopy. Isaac, dazed, sits up, the nightmare of his past life still fresh. He confirms the impossible. He has truly been sent back 20 years in time. But this time he has the knowledge of a seasoned warrior and a future to rewrite. He vows he will succeed, but first he needs to regain his powers. You know that little detail. His eyes snap open. A sudden sound breaks his concentration. He shouts a warning to the others. The Count's guards have found them. Isaac's eyes narrow with grim certainty. This is far from over. He steps forward only to find his friend Gavin kneeling in the dirt. He calls his friend's name, a question hanging in the air. His father explains the harsh truth. The soldiers reached Gavin's parents. Isaac's mind reels, refusing to accept this new, horrible reality. He remembers with absolute certainty that in his first life they survived. His father tries to comfort him, suggesting he give Gavin some time alone. But Isaac can only stare. His friend's pain is a stark reminder of his failure. The timeline is fracturing. His memories are no longer a reliable guide. He demands to know why they did not escape when their house was so close to the safe zone. His father explains, his face heavy with grim details. The Count's son, Sebald, found his fallen soldiers and flew into a rage. Isaac realizes with crushing certainty that this is all his fault. By saving his own parents, he inadvertently signed the death warrant for Gavin's parents. He stomps his foot on the ground, overwhelmed by guilt and helplessness. The peaceful forest canopy seems to mock his inner turmoil. He looks up to the sky, addressing whatever cosmic force sent him back. He wonders if this second chance is a gift or simply a crueler punishment. But his father's hand on his shoulder rescues him from his despair. He reminds Isaac that the true villains are the Ravels, the architects of this tragedy. His father's words are a balm. Telling Isaac that he is proud of him for saving Gavin, the praise cuts through his despair, reminding him that he cannot just wallow in his fate. He clenches his fist, vowing to use his 20 years of bitter experience to crush his enemies. He knows he must make the most of his one true advantage, and that begins with reviving his powers, since now he can barely face a single soldier. A new oath reflects in his eyes. This time he will protect everyone. His thoughts turn to Madeline, his little sister, a painful reminder of his past failures. After his parents' death, his blind pursuit of vengeance led him to leave her behind. She was left in the care of the village mayor, the man in charge. A man who at first glance seems like a perfectly trustworthy village elder. But Isaac only learned later that the mayor was a monster in disguise. He sold Madeline to the Count's men, who continued the cycle of cruelty. Her cries for the brother who never came went completely unanswered, and in the end, the weight of it all was too much for her to bear. The memory fades, and Isaac's eyes snap back to the present. He makes a silent, unbreakable promise to her memory, and then he sees her, alive and well, standing right in front of him. Overwhelmed, he embraces her, vowing never to make the same mistake again. But a sudden thought cuts through his relief like a shard of ice. A man's desperate cry for his own sister breaks the reunion. The boy explains that his sister is now in the care of the village mayor. Isaac realizes with horror that saving his own family has condemned Gavin's. He grabs Gavin, frantically warning him that the mayor cannot be trusted. But Gavin is confused, reminding him that the man is the respected leader of the village. And speaking of the devil, the mayor himself arrives to see what the commotion is about. Isaac's eyes widen at the face of the man who destroyed his sister's life. The mayor approaches, feigning concern for the grieving boy, but Isaac sees through the act, knowing that wretched man is hiding his true nature. He thanks him for his kindness. Isaac turns away, knowing it is pointless to argue. No one would ever believe him. Feigning exhaustion, Isaac apologizes, needing a moment to process it. As the sun sets, the sky burns with the memory of the day's fires. Night falls over the forest, bringing a tense, fragile silence. He remembers his first life, how he fled to the mountains after losing his family. Back then, his powers awakened weeks later, simply by a stroke of luck. But this time he knows the secret, and he can regain his magic in just 2 days. With a new plan in mind, he slips out of the camp under the cover of darkness. He sees that the village is even more devastated thanks to Sebald's extended tantrum. But before he can focus on his powers, there is another rat to deal with. His eyes lock onto his target, the treacherous village mayor's house. He arrives just in time to hear a desperate cry for help from inside. Gavin's sister is cornered, trapped by 2 of the mayor's fierce hounds. The beasts growl, their eyes gleaming with malice, ready to attack on command. She can only beg for her life, her hope fading with each passing second. But the mayor grabs her, his words laced with a vile insinuation. He sneers that no one will come to save her, revealing his true, monstrous nature. But a new voice cuts through the darkness, confronting him and calling him the scum he is. The mayor turns, enraged that someone dares to interfere with his fun. And there is Isaac with an expression that promises a world of pain for the traitor. The mayor sneers, threatening the boy who clearly has no idea who he is messing with. With a single command, the mayor unleashes his fierce hounds. Isaac's eyes widen in panic. He is just an ordinary boy facing 2 beasts. He leaps away, knowing he must lead the dogs away from Gavin's sister. He pivots sharply, his movements fluid and trained despite his weaker body. His battlefield instincts kick in as he narrowly dodges the first attack. Thinking quickly, he makes a tactical retreat, slamming a door shut behind him. But the mayor only smirks smugly, completely unperturbed by the boy's escape attempt. He picks up a nearby axe, ready to launch into a classic villain monologue. He confesses that he orchestrated the deaths of Isaac's parents just to get to his sister, and now he laughs, deciding he will simply have to kill Isaac himself. But Isaac only sneers, asking if the villain is done with his little speech. He exposes the entire conspiracy, revealing that he knows about the deal with Count Ravel. The mayor is stunned and demands to know who leaked the information. Isaac's answer is simple and terrifying. The mayor told him himself in another life. He explains that he has already killed him once before, right after a similar confession. And with a chilling smile, he admits he looks forward to repeating the performance. With the conversation over, Isaac lunges forward with blinding speed. The mayor swings his axe, proving to be surprisingly agile. But for a man with 20 years of combat experience, his moves are ridiculously predictable. Isaac slips past his guard, his own sword ready to end this once and for all. Isaac's sword cuts deep, drawing first blood in their deadly dance. The mayor stares at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend the boy's skill. He dismisses the attack as a lucky hit and brings his axe down with renewed fury. But Isaac dodges the blow, responding with a powerful body check. He presses his advantage, his knife a blur of deadly intent. The mayor gasps, demanding to know where a peasant boy learned such moves. Isaac coldly informs him that his only concern should be the painful end that awaits him. He launches into the air, ready to end the fight with a single decisive kick. But the mayor reveals his trump card. He is a magic user because of course he is. A wave of golden energy erupts, sending Isaac flying across the room. Isaac grits his teeth, his mind reeling from the unexpected magical attack. He is slammed into the wall, realizing with growing horror that the mayor controls electricity. He remembers his first life, when killing this man was trivial once he awakened his own powers. The mayor mocks him, revealing that the count's promises went far beyond a simple title. He was granted the ultimate gift. The count helped him awaken his own magical abilities. We are reminded of the nobles, the tyrants who exploit the people for their own benefit. Their entire system of oppression is built upon formidable inherited power. By channeling electrical currents, they can move at blinding speed and erect powerful barriers. They can weave intricate spells, their sigils glowing with energy, and in their most ruthless aspect, they can reduce their enemies to ashes with a simple flick of the wrist. The official story is that this power was a gift from the gods, a divine mandate for the nobles to protect humanity from demon hordes. But Isaac knows that is just the propaganda fed to the masses. The truth is much simpler. Anyone can obtain this power with special pills, a secret drug created by the nobles to bestow the gift of electricity. The mayor confirms that the count's promise was real as the power courses through his body. He dreams of leaving this village behind and taking his place among the elite. But Isaac only sneers with contempt, telling him he is nothing but a disposable pawn in their game. Enraged, the mayor unleashes another discharge, tired of the boy's defiance. But Isaac sees the truth. Man is a novice. He can barely control his new abilities. Isaac knows he can beat this amateur, but without his own powers, a single touch means he will literally be fried. He dodges another wild blast, his mind working overtime to find an opening in the man's careless attacks. And then he sees it, a spark of an idea in the corner of the room, a spool of copper wire, a perfect conductor for his opponent's uncontrolled magic. The mayor roars, promising that there is nowhere left for the boy to run. With his plan ready, Isaac grabs the spool, ready to turn the tables. He knows it is a risky gamble, a desperate attempt with a single chance of success. He quickly ties one end of the wire, setting the first piece of his trap. He runs across the room, unspooling the wire as the mayor closes in. The other end is secured to a decorative sword and shield, creating a deadly circuit. He wraps the wire around a metal doorknob, setting the final piece of his trap. The circuit continues up to a heavy iron chandelier hanging from the ceiling. With everything in place, Isaac just needs his opponent to give him his best shot. A confident smile spreads across his face. The plan is simple but effective. He taunts the mayor, asking how he can call himself a noble if he cannot hit a simple peasant. The man roars with fury, falling completely for the oldest villain trap. He unleashes a massive, uncontrolled discharge of golden lightning, tired of the games. Isaac's eyes narrow, knowing this is the exact moment he was waiting for. He hurls the spool of wire directly into the path of the incoming attack. The raw energy strikes the copper, turning Isaac's improvised trap into an electrified cable. A spark of triumph lights up Isaac's eyes. His desperate plan is working perfectly. With a final, calculated kick, he sends the spool flying into position. The mayor is caught off guard as the wire fills with his own redirected electricity. The copper web wraps around him, becoming the conductor of his own spectacular downfall. He stumbles, completely outmatched by the boy he had dismissed as a mere peasant. Isaac reveals his trap. Every dodge was an opportunity to weave a net charged by his enemy's attacks. The mayor's face twists in horror as he realizes he has been manipulated from the start. Isaac declares victory as the trap activates, turning the man's power against him. The villain is thrown back, hopelessly trapped in his own electrified prison. His screams fade as he is consumed by the very magic he wielded so arrogantly. The mayor kneels in the rubble, demanding to know how a mere boy could defeat him. Isaac turns around, with an expression of mild annoyance that the man is still breathing. He even admits he is a bit surprised the guy survived a self-inflicted electrocution of that magnitude. But when Isaac picks up a knife, the mayor's defiant attitude quickly turns into a desperate plea. He offers Isaac a place among the nobles, a reward from the count for his talent. But Isaac's eyes are cold, asking how he dares to beg after what he did to his sister. The mayor is confused, insisting that he has not laid a finger on Madeline, at least in this timeline. Isaac simply looms over the cowering coward, his patience completely exhausted. The ghost of his future self materializes behind him, a promise of the vengeance to come. He makes it clear that no matter the life, their encounters will always end the same way. And with a single brutal slash, Isaac fulfills his promise of destruction. The mayor's reign of terror ends in a pool of his own blood on the floor. With the threat neutralized, Isaac turns to Gavin's sister, urging her to escape. But he quickly realizes the poor girl has fainted from sheer terror. He takes a moment, the weight of his actions settling in the sudden silence. Lifting her carefully, he promises to reunite her with her brother, Gavin, but his escape is interrupted by the mayor's other security system. He kicks the door open, only to find two very large and very angry dogs. Apparently, they are not happy about their owner's recent elimination. But Isaac's eyes are filled with grim determination. He is not about to fail now. The once fierce hounds now seem to have seen a ghost. Apparently, they just needed a change in management to behave. Back at the survivor camp, Gavin is lost in despair, waiting for his friend's return. But a sudden sound at the door snaps him out of his grief. He hastily stands up, calling his sister's name as Isaac enters. While Gavin embraces his sister, he demands answers, and Isaac's look says it all. Isaac exposes the ugly truth. The mayor was a traitor working with their enemies. Gavin panics, but Isaac calmly assures him the problem has been dealt with permanently. He heads to the room, explaining that he has a mission he must complete alone. His eyes burn with determination as he promises to return, his secret plan already in motion. Isaac's father places a hand on his shoulder, his voice full of pride. He declares that Count Ravel's tyranny must finally come to an end. Isaac is moved by his father's words, seeing a strength he never came to appreciate. He grips his father's arm, a silent promise passing between them. With renewed determination, Isaac vows that this time he will not let his family down. His father's smile is all the encouragement he needs. A simple, powerful, "I am proud of you." With his family safe for now, Isaac begins his solo mission, heading toward the mountains. He ventures into the wilderness because nothing says secret mission like a dramatic mountain hike. His destination is the summit, a place that holds the key to his lost power. He remembers his first life, how he fled to these same mountains after losing everything. He remembers wandering for weeks, lost in a haze of grief and vengeance. He had collapsed on this very mountain, taking shelter under an old, weathered tree. And that was the moment his entire life changed forever. A bolt of pure, untamed energy fell from the skies. He was struck by lightning, which is generally not recommended for one's health. But now he knows the secret. This particular tree is a natural lightning rod. He can feel a storm approaching, the air crackling with a familiar energy. This time he is not going to wait for luck. He's going to force his own awakening. He knows that the noble's power is not a gift from the gods, but a stolen birthright. Every human being has the potential to wield this power. They just need a small spark. Knows the secret. A specific part of the brain can be activated to control electricity. To control this power, the nobles created special pills to force an awakening. This ensured a steady supply of powerful users to maintain their grip on the kingdom. But Isaac knows the pills were just a shortcut to a much older method. The original method was much more direct, being struck by a lightning bolt from the sky. This natural awakening unlocks far greater power, but it comes with a risk that usually ends in a charred corpse. That is why the nobles invented a safer method. He remembers his first life, where a random lightning bolt granted him his powers by pure chance. A nearby thunderclap confirms that the storm has arrived. Now he just needs to wait for his moment. He closes his eyes, ready to receive the lightning that will change his fate. Isaac's eyes lock onto the sky as the perfect bolt begins to form. A massive fork of golden energy tears through the clouds, heading directly toward him. He roars at the storm, ready to claim the power that will fuel his vengeance. But the lightning strikes the ground beside him, completely missing its target. Isaac can only curse his luck. His one perfect chance turned out to be a failure. He knows with grim certainty that he will not get another opportunity like this. The storm is already moving away. Its epicenter now hovers over a deep chasm. Thinking fast, he anchors a rope to the tree, preparing for a desperate leap. With no other choice, he launches himself into the open air, chasing the storm itself. He places all his faith in a single knot, praying it will be enough to carry him to his destination. He screams at the sky, wondering if this is some cruel test of his will. He roars that nothing will stop him from getting the vengeance he deserves. With a powerful leap, he launches himself from the cliff's edge. He swings over the abyss, a tiny figure against the vast, stormy sky. And this time the heavens answer, enveloping him in a torrent of pure power. His eyes burn with golden light as the energy courses through his entire being. He endures the agony, his body becoming a conduit for the storm itself. And as the power settles, the scar from his first life begins to form again on his face. The rope that carried him to his fate smokes, having served its purpose. A moment later, a crimson explosion erupts, signaling a successful and very dramatic awakening. He rises from the charred earth, his body now a vessel for the storm's fury. His mind is consumed by a single burning thought, vengeance, and he roars his promise to the sky that this time it will be his. Isaac stands at the cliff's edge, feeling the familiar crackle of power in his hand. He remembers his first life, where awakening his magic was only the beginning of a long road. It took him years of meticulous practice to achieve true mastery, but this time he is not a clumsy novice learning from scratch. He has 20 years of experience to skip the tutorial and go straight to the final boss. The mountainside itself splits in two, unable to contain his explosive return. He clenches his fist, knowing his quest for vengeance has only just begun. Isaac tests his raw power, shattering the very ground beneath him. He smirks smugly, satisfied with the initial results of his dramatic power boost. But raw strength is only part of the equation. Now it is time to test his speed. He channels lightning through his body, preparing for a burst of movement. In a flash, he descends the mountainside like a living bolt of crimson lightning. He clocks his speed at 100 meters per second, which apparently is barely acceptable. With the basics covered, he decides to try summoning his ultimate weapon, his avatar. He concentrates all his energy, his eyes burning as he calls upon his spectral beast. And from the skies descends a small, crackling lizard of energy. Well, that is disappointing. He realizes with a sigh that his teenage body still cannot handle his full power. He remembers that avatars are the ultimate expression of power, a manifestation of the wielder's soul. A single warrior with this ability can annihilate entire armies without breaking a sweat. Isaac knows he still has a long way to go, but he has found the perfect peaceful spot to train. But his quiet training session is interrupted by a familiar voice calling his name. He turns, surprised, and discovers that his sister Madeline has followed him into the mountains. She explains that his strange behavior made her suspicious, and she wants to know how he suddenly became so strong. Isaac realizes he cannot talk his way out of this. With a deep sigh, he decides to tell her the impossible truth. Takes a breath, preparing to completely shatter his sister's reality. And then he just blurts it out. He is a time traveler from the future, as if it were nothing. Madeline's first reaction is to punch him hard, asking if he really is joking at a time like this. Isaac sighs, realizing that saying, "I come from the future," sounds a bit crazy out loud. But to his surprise, she completely accepts it, excited that her brother is now one of the awakened. Her mind immediately jumps to the benefits. Entering the academy, getting rich, and annoying the nobles. Isaac has to gently bring his sister back down to earth before she starts planning their retirement. He promises to protect her with his life, but insists that his powers must remain a secret for now. He tries to explain the danger they are in, but she interrupts him with a reassuring word. With a warm smile, she tells him she trusts him completely. After all, he has already kept them safe. Then she casually asks him if the new jagged mark on his face will be permanent. Isaac panics, realizing with horror that the lightning left him with exactly the same scar as in his first life. And so, under the silent watch of the mountain peaks, his training begins. He has 20 years of experience, but a body that needs to catch up. He concentrates, channeling the raw power now flowing through his veins. And with his sister as his surprisingly enthusiastic training partner, the real work begins. She launches a volley of stones, a simple but effective test of his reflexes. His task is to see them, track them, and dodge each one. His eyes narrow, his battlefield instincts kicking in at full force. He moves like a blur, his body wreathed in crimson lightning. He is getting faster, but perfection is still out of reach. Madeline notes that his progress seems natural, as if he had been doing this his whole life, if only she knew. Madeline asks to be let down from her post, but Isaac is completely focused. She is not going to let him go until he hits all the targets. She complains that she has been stuck there for hours as the exercise continues. He moves in a flash of crimson light, destroying each projectile with precision. With a confident smile, he declares the task complete and immediately increases the difficulty. He reflects on his initial despair, believing this second chance was a cruel punishment. The week of intense training with his sister has been revealing. Seeing her alive and happy has given him a new and powerful sense of purpose. These quiet moments of peace are a stark contrast to his first solitary life. And at the end of each day, he realizes that this second chance might be a gift after all. He reflects that this second chance is the best thing that has happened to him in 20 years. He knows that a reunion with Silas is inevitable, but first there is another score to settle. His thoughts turn to the Ravels, the family responsible for all his suffering. In his first life, he was never able to bring justice for his family. Their rank and his grand plan to dismantle the system from within stayed his hand, a plan that now seems like a bitter, foolish joke. But now there is no politics, no grand plans, only pure power. He forges a blade of pure energy, a promise of the vengeance to come. The mountain itself trembles as he unleashes a torrent of destructive force. He makes a new vow. This time there will be no subtlety. His first target is Ravel Castle, the heart of his enemy's domain. He scales the fortress walls, wreathed in a flash of crimson energy, moving like a ghost, landing without a sound. The castle is heavily guarded, but they don't even see him coming. But for a man who can move like a living lightning bolt, those guards might as well be completely frozen. Inside, the castle staff rushes to prepare dinner. The head chef screams at his subordinates, terrified at the thought of making the nobles wait. Isaac watches from the shadows. Dinner time is the perfect opportunity, and a group of board guards is about to make his wish come true. They complain about the mayor's unfulfilled promise to bring them women and young men, but one of them interrupts with breaking news. The mayor is dead. The others are shocked, but their only concern is their disgusting prize. From above, Isaac confirms that these are the men who plan to harm his sister and Hannah. His eyes burn with a cold fury. He's about to introduce them to his new stone companion. A flash of crimson energy cuts through the night, silent and deadly. The gargoyle he was perched on comes to life, animated by his fury. It lunges at the first guard with the force of a battering ram. The survivors can only watch in horror, blaming a loose statue for the attack. As they confirm their friend's death, they have no idea that the real monster is still watching. The guards dismiss the incident, completely oblivious to the true falling object, their life expectancy. But before they can even move, another guard is eliminated by a silent crimson silhouette. With the immediate threat neutralized, Isaac thinks his path is now clear. But he knows he cannot just wander aimlessly through the castle's maze of towers. He channels his crimson lightning, preparing to scale the tower in a single leap. In a flash of pure energy, he shoots up the stone wall, leaving a trail of red light. From above, he finally spots his target, the Count's personal quarters. Without a moment's hesitation, he jumps across the rooftops toward his goal. He decides to fight his way down, a systematic approach to his solo siege. He quickly finds a heavily guarded door, certain the Count is just on the other side. His hand crackles with crimson energy as he swears to make the Count pay for his crimes. The guards don't even have time to finish their challenge before he attacks. He descends from above in a flash of lightning, too fast for them to comprehend. With a single touch, he channels his power directly into the guard's weapon. The soldier can only scream as he is overwhelmed by raw, untamed energy. Isaac calmly takes the man's sword, as he will no longer need it. He interrupts the party, announcing his presence to the Count and his son. His eyes burn with cold fury as he tells the noble that it's time to pay his butcher's bill. But Count Ravel only glances over, looking more bored than threatened. Sebald sips his drink smugly, as if he had been waiting for company all along. Sebald smiles arrogantly, having predicted that the mayor's killer would come knocking. But the Count doubts that a simple peasant could have killed his magical pawn. He theorizes that Isaac must have stolen the awakening pills from the mayor. Sebald then makes a crude joke, asking if the pills work as advertised. Isaac's patience runs out as the noble's taunts grow even more vile. The whole family is already laughing, openly showing their contempt for commoners. To them, he is nothing more than an insect to be crushed. But Isaac is no longer in the mood for games and confirms that he killed their traitorous pawn. Sebald simply collects his bet with an arrogant smile. Apparently, betrayal is a family sport. The Count yawns, admitting that his son understands the commoner mindset better. The Count continues his rant, mocking the supposed brutality of the common people. But his monologue is interrupted by a flash of crimson energy on his table. Isaac asks the Count if he is familiar with a certain unflattering nickname. He reveals that the high nobles in the capital call him the pot-bellied pig. Isaac remembers from his first life how the elite loved to mock the provincial lords. The Count's eyes blaze with fury, his pride wounded by the peasant's words. Isaac then includes the Countess, calling them a pair of pigs. It turns out even tyrants get bullied. The Countess is furious, her own magical power beginning to manifest. She unleashes a massive explosion of golden energy, promising to burn him alive. But when the smoke clears, Isaac remains completely unharmed by her attack. Isaac smirks arrogantly, taunts her with an insult, and asks if that's all she has. The Countess is stunned, her mind refusing to accept that he is completely unscathed. She decides to raise the stakes, preparing to unleash the full force of her magic, but Isaac is already a step ahead. His hand is a flash of crimson lightning. Her eyes widen as she realizes something is terribly wrong with her own power. The Count explains her fatal error. She is a novice who skipped all the safety tutorials. He can only shout his wife's name, completely powerless to stop what is coming. Isaac knows that it only takes a spark to turn her power into a bomb, and with a flick of his wrist, he detonates the unstable energy in a massive explosion. The Count can only watch in horror as his wife is consumed by her own magic. Sebald screams in horror. His mother's name is a desperate, furious cry. He stares at his mother's fallen figure, demanding to know what Isaac has done. But Isaac is already behind the Count, promising a quick family reunion. Enraged, Sebald unleashes his own golden lightning, refusing to let a peasant win. But Isaac faces the attack head-on, his crimson power clashing with the noble's gold. His combat instincts warn him of danger. The Count is attacking from behind. He dodges just in time as two energy blasts collide where he was standing. The Count taunts him, unimpressed by the boy's desperate evasive maneuvers. He approaches slowly, lecturing Isaac on the foolishness of challenging his superiors. The Count gathers his own power, preparing to end this little peasant uprising himself. The Count promises to raise Isaac's village as his own power begins to burn. But Isaac only flashes a mocking smile, ready to tell the little piggies a story. He declares that the wolf is finally at the door and it's time to collect. Sebald screams for his mother, lunging forward in a blind, vengeful fury. But for a man with 20 years of combat experience, the attack is ridiculously slow. He dodges the blow effortlessly, finding the whole scene quite pathetic. He knows their pill-induced magic is no match for his naturally awakened power, but a beam of purple energy cuts through the air, reminding him that this is a 2-on-1 fight. He realizes that facing father and son at the same time might actually be a challenge. The Count is a veteran, perfectly synchronizing their attacks to catch Isaac off balance. The Count shouts at his son to attack while Isaac is distracted. He lunges forward, his own magic ready to crush the boy from behind. But Isaac stands firm, ready to face them both at once. His eyes burn with power, his concentration absolute. He stops both attacks simultaneously, becoming a living shield against their combined force. With a single decisive blow, he declares checkmate to the stunned Count. Then he turns his attention to Sebald, his grip as strong as an iron vice. He mocks his claim of divine right, his hand crackling with mortal intent, and with one final brutal explosion, he decides it's time to wash away their sins. The Count can only scream in horror as his son is consumed by the crimson storm. The Count roars with fury, his own purple magic bursting to life. He unleashes a massive wave of energy, intending to annihilate the boy. But when the dust settles, Isaac remains completely unharmed. Count demands to know who this monster is that has invaded his home. Isaac's answer sends a chill down the noble's spine. He is just a peasant, a nobody who has suffered under the Count's cruelty his whole life, and now he has finally decided enough is enough. The Count finally understands, realizing that Isaac's power comes from a natural awakening. He laments that this peasant boy has taken everything from him. But Isaac only flashes a mocking smile and tells him he has simply cleaned the pigsty. The Count roars defiantly, warning that the nobles will never forgive this. He insists that killing him will only be Isaac's death sentence, but Isaac's eyes are cold and unwavering, completely indifferent to the threat. The Count points to the pendant on his chest, the symbol of his noble authority. Isaac just scoffs, tearing the trinket from the Count's neck. The Count crawls on the floor, screaming that a peasant is unworthy to touch the drop of blood. He continues his desperate threats, promising that the high nobles will pursue Isaac. But Isaac calmly examines the pendant, telling the Count not to be so sure. His own crimson power reflects in the gem, a promise of a new order, and he declares that this time he will be the one hunting. And with one final brutal slash, Isaac ends the Count's reign of terror. With the Ravel family gone, their castle now has a new, very angry owner. But Isaac's work is not done. He is on the hunt for the castle's true treasure. He has his mind set on a single prize, a rare mineral known as arcanite. It is a precious mineral that nobles use to amplify their electrical powers, and Isaac remembers that the Count boasted that his lands were full of it. He is certain the old pig hoarded a huge reserve in his personal chamber. He quickly finds the room and a very suspicious-looking treasure chest. Dispensing with the need for a key, he simply blows the lock open with his magic. But inside, he finds only a single solitary piece of the precious mineral. What a disappointment. Isaac curses the Count's poor hoarding skills. He was hoping to find enough arcanite to forge a weapon. But this tiny splinter is far from the legendary sword he needs to craft. Still, with the Ravels gone, he knows his village will have a brief window of peace. It will take time for the nobles to send a replacement, especially with the chaos he is planning. He is certain that the capital will soon have much bigger problems than a remote province. This means his family will be safe while he enrolls in the academy, which is a good long-term plan. He can't wait to see their faces when he tells them he is one of the awakened. His thoughts return to his first life, a grim reminder of how different everything was. Back then, he had staggered down the mountain, believing he had only been electrocuted. He barely made it back to the village before collapsing in a daze. He remembers the villagers rushing to help him, finding him weak and disoriented. They shouted his name, worried for his safety as he tried to downplay it. And at that moment he had summoned his first spark of uncontrolled magic. The whole village celebrated, proclaiming him as their new protector. He was their hope, a noble born from their own ranks to protect them from tyranny. Back in the present, he smiles, eager to see their faces this time. But his smile fades as he realizes the village is completely and eerily silent. His mind fills with the worst possibilities, wondering if another attack has occurred. He moves in a flash of crimson energy, abandoning any attempt at a casual entrance. Bursting into his house, he screams for his sister and his friend, his heart pounding with fear. He enters the town square, finding it eerily silent and with no signs of struggle. But the silence is broken by the sound of a surprise celebration. Isaac is completely stunned as the entire village erupts in a chorus of cheers. They surround him with questions, proclaiming him as their new noble protector. His mother smiles proudly, asking him for a demonstration of his new abilities. Isaac shoots his sister a murderous glare, reminding her that this was supposed to be a secret. Madeline shyly admits that she only told 1 or 2 people, plus the rest of the village. The local children gather around him, eyes wide with wonder and a million questions. Their imaginations run wild with stories about his divine power, begging him for a demonstration. Isaac tries to let them down gently, but the crowd's excitement is impossible to contain. He is surprised to see even the adults join in, begging for just one small spark. With a tired sigh, Isaac gives in and agrees to show them some party tricks. A crimson lightning bolt crackles in his palm, a familiar and dangerous energy. He shapes the power into a galloping horse, dazzling the crowd with a simple light show. The villagers erupt in cheers, their new hero's name echoing through the square, but the celebration is interrupted by the sound of heavy approaching footsteps. A new voice calls his name, and Isaac turns to face the unexpected visitor. A huge warrior, covered in wolfskin, emerges and identifies Isaac as the newly awakened one. His eyes are cold as he reveals that he knows who was strong enough to kill the mayor. Isaac recognizes him instantly. Rassak, the infamous leader of the Silver Wolves. Well, so much for keeping a low profile. Rassak reveals that the mayor was a former Silver Wolf, a fact that complicates things, and he is here to defend their honor by killing the man who defeated him. Isaac doesn't deny it for a second, admitting that he was the one who finished off the traitor. Rassak actually agrees, admitting that his former comrade was a scumbag. But a code is a code, and he is bound by honor to avenge him anyway. But Isaac's attention is drawn to the gem embedded in the sword's hilt. He recognizes it instantly. It is the rare arcanite he has been searching for. Rassak smirks smugly and then strikes the gem with his fist, activating its power. The blade ignites with energy as he formally challenges Isaac to a duel to the death. The villagers try to lead him to safety, but Isaac has no intention of backing down. Isaac observes that his opponent is strong, but without noble blood, he cannot handle electricity. He ignores Gavin's frantic protests and borrows a pitchfork for the impending duel. He calmly reassures his friend, telling him that being awakened changes the rules a bit. With his eyes fixed on the arcanite sword, Isaac accepts the challenge without hesitation. He tries to move the fight to a safer location, but Rassak has other, more immediate plans. The Silver Wolf leader wastes no time and unleashes a devastating first blow. Isaac deflects the strike, realizing that his opponent is using the crowd as a human shield. He shouts for the villagers to get back. His concern for them overrides his focus. He is forced to fight defensively, unable to unleash his full destructive power. Rasek mocks his hesitation, knowing the boy fears electrocuting his own people. Isaac realizes this is not Rasek's first time. The man knows how to fight and awakened. He plants his feet, driving the pitchfork into the ground for support. With a quick spin, he prepares to turn the tables on his opponent. He knows he cannot risk a wide area attack with civilians nearby, but he can still channel his power directly into the pitchfork, turning it into a lethal weapon. Rasek is impressed and praises the boy's skill as their weapons clash. Isaac ducks under a powerful blow. His movements are fluid and precise. He knows that without magic, Rasek's movements are predictable to a trained eye. With a roar, Isaac goes on the offensive, ready to end this little duel. He hurls the electrified pitchfork, turning a simple farm tool into a lightning-fast projectile. But Rasek deflects the blow with ease, unimpressed by the boy's first real attack. Isaac's eyes narrow. He knows this fight is far from over. He realizes he cannot use his full speed without endangering the innocent villagers. But a new plan arises, a way to control his explosive power. He uses the pitchfork as an anchor, spinning with incredibly controlled speed. Rasek is caught off guard, surprised by the boy's sudden tactical shift. Isaac unleashes a powerful slash, forcing the Silver Wolf leader onto the defensive. He sees his opportunity, driving the pitchfork into the ground to create a launching point. With a powerful leap, he aims a decisive blow at his opponent's back. But Isaac's eyes widen in disbelief as he sees his attack simply bounce off harmlessly. Rasek praises the boy's strength, but reveals that he too has some tricks up his sleeve. The wolfskin on his armor suddenly transforms into a living, breathing animal. Isaac's eyes widen as he realizes what he is seeing. It is a full suit of Arcanite armor, and the one wearing it has a title. Rasek, the noble slayer, promises to show Isaac the true and terrifying power of the rare mineral. With a powerful blow to his own chest, he activates the armor's hidden ability. The Arcanite absorbs the impact, releasing a surge of stored electricity. He then reveals that he stole all this valuable mineral from none other than Count Ravel. And he roars that once he is done with Isaac, he will go after the Count himself. He boasts that Isaac will be the sixth lightning fanatic to join his list of victims. Isaac feels the immense power radiating from his opponent's armor. Rasek moves at blinding speed, discharging his sword with explosive force. But Isaac's focus is divided. The entire village is watching from a distance. He knows he cannot unleash his full power without risking innocent lives. His family can only watch in terror, placing their hopes in their new protector. Rasek's skill with the Arcanite armor is clearly on another level, but Isaac sees a weakness, a way to turn that borrowed power against its wearer. We receive a brief explanation about Arcanite, the most valuable mineral in the world. Its unique properties allow it to store and amplify electrical energy, a secret the nobles have used for generations to enhance their weapons and armor. But for those without the gift, the mineral is a ticking time bomb. If its capacity is overloaded, it detonates with spectacular and decidedly user-unfriendly results. Isaac smirks smugly, realizing that Rasek's armor is probably running on a dollar store battery. Rasek is impressed and congratulates the boy on his surprising resilience. He continues his attack, admitting that Isaac has already lasted longer than his other victims. As Rasek monologues about his tragic past, Isaac's mind is already focused on the solution. The Silver Wolf leader swore an oath to eradicate every last noble from the face of the earth. And since Isaac is now one of the awakened, he is officially on the list. But Isaac has a plan. He places his hand on the ground to prepare his counterattack. Rasek leaps in for the kill, promising that Isaac will be no exception to his crusade. Rasek jumps into the air, promising to split Isaac in two, but Isaac sees his opportunity, knowing he must give it his all to seize it. Rasek laughs, impressed that Isaac is putting up a better fight than his previous victims. He brings his sword down for the killing blow, but Isaac's timing must be perfect. He waits, his eyes fixed on the descending blade for the perfect moment to act, and at the very last possible second he catches the warrior's wrist, stopping the blow. Rasek taunts him, mocking the boy for choosing to block instead of dodge. He thinks it's a fatal mistake, but Isaac is just getting started. With a serene expression, Isaac declares that the fight is over. His eyes burn with a crimson light as he reveals his true advantage, skill over brute force. He reveals his trump card. He has been charging the Arcanite with his own power, a direct injection of pure energy far more than the armor was designed to handle. Rasek can only scream as the borrowed power turns against him in a violent surge. He is thrown back, consumed by the very energy he thought to control. The overload detonates in a massive explosion, shaking the entire town square. When the dust settles, the legendary sword of the noble slayer clatters to the ground. Rasak gasps, his body completely scorched by the uncontrolled electrical feedback. He collapses to his knees, his armor now nothing more than an expensive, smoking paperweight. Isaac sighs, knowing it takes years of training to handle that kind of raw power. His friends run toward him, calling his name with a mix of relief and concern. The villagers rush to Isaac's side, their relief palpable. Rasak can only stare, his mind refusing to accept his defeat. He demands to know how a simple boy could have outmatched him. Isaac calmly explains that he simply turned the warrior's own power against him. The noble slayer is stunned by the simple and brutal effectiveness of the tactic. He accepts his fate, asking Isaac to grant him an end worthy of a warrior. With a tired smile, he opens his arms, ready for the final blow. But Isaac simply closes his eyes and gives him a firm refusal. Rasak's eyes widen in disbelief, completely baffled by the refusal. He roars that Isaac cannot deny him an honorable death. Apparently there are rules for this sort of thing. Isaac explains that he is not a mercenary. He follows a different, nobler code. He calls it the Code of the Protectors, a code that he is clearly making up on the spot, a code that states that the loser must become the winner's loyal vassal. He points at the stunned warrior, laying out the terms of his surrender. And he declares that Rasak, the legendary noble slayer, must now serve him. Rasak is shocked, wondering how this boy knows so much about him. Isaac leans in, revealing that they share a common, all-consuming goal, a shared desire to see all the corrupt nobility burned to the ground. Isaac adds that a man with his skills would be a valuable asset to the cause. And with a pat on the chest, he gives the warrior his first official order: protect this village. Isaac lays out his plan. Silver wolves will protect his home while he goes to the capital. He is heading there to prepare a special welcome for the corrupt nobility. Rasak considers the boy's words, seeing the same fire of vengeance in his eyes. With a gesture of respect, the legendary noble slayer accepts his new mission. He makes a solemn vow, a promise sealed with a warrior's honor. As long as he draws breath, no harm will come to this village or its people. But Isaac has one last request, quite audacious for his new vassal. He casually informs Rasak that he will be borrowing his legendary sword, to keep. He explains that the Arcanite gem embedded in the hilt is exactly what he needs. And so, Isaac takes the valuable mineral and forges a new weapon in the heart of the flames. He explains his design choice, a custom job to better channel his electrical power. He is basically inventing the next decade of military technology, giving himself a huge head start. With a quick rap on the hilt, his new weapon is ready for the road. Sheathes the blade, a symbol of his new path and the vengeance he will bring. With his home now safe, Isaac bids a heartfelt farewell to his entire village. His sister, his friends, and even his new vassal, Rasak, are there to see him off. His family waves goodbye, their faces full of pride and hope for his journey. The whole community wishes him well, placing their faith on his shoulders. He gives them one last confident smile, promising to return as soon as he can. And with that, Isaac walks away, finally beginning his solo mission. With his new sword on his back, Isaac sets out on the long road ahead. His expression is one of iron determination. His journey has only just begun. His destination is the academy, the same place where his first life's mission began. But this time he arrives with his powers already mastered, ready to meet his future comrades. And it will be there that he meets again the man he considered his brother, the ultimate traitor and the final target of his vengeance, Silas Montfort. In the next chapter, our protagonist is on his journey to the capital by sea. He can't wait to reach Lutetia. In his thoughts, he explains that once he arrives in the city, he will first present himself to the authorities. All newly awakened are granted the right to enroll in the Imperial Academy, along with the children of noble families. However, he notes something interesting. Newly awakened people always consider their powers a gift from God. This is due to the traumatic experience of being struck by lightning, which makes them forget what really happened. So they all naturally assume they were chosen by God. As he thinks about using this moment to train, a girl suddenly collides with him. Our protagonist instinctively tries to help her, but to his surprise, the girl turns out to be his sister. Even more surprised, he asks her what she is doing there. Madeline wonders if it isn't obvious. She is going with him to the capital. Our protagonist immediately refuses. However, his little sister is completely stubborn. She insists on following him, pointing out that she doesn't want to be cooped up in the village. Seeing her serious expression as he insists that this is crazy, she gets a little nervous. This leads her to question his sudden change in attitude. not to mention that her brother somehow mastered the sword and even taught himself to control lightning. She finds the whole situation suspicious and directly asks him what he is hiding. Hearing this, our protagonist gives his usual answer, saying he came from the future. Now, he can only sigh as his sister assumes he is making excuses. She concludes that he must have fallen and hit his head, which would explain his strange behavior. Our protagonist is speechless. Still, he points out that it's too dangerous to take her with him and adds that their parents wouldn't agree. As if she had been waiting for this, she calmly pulls out a letter saying it's from their parents. Our protagonist can't believe his sister actually managed to convince their parents to let her go to the city. He scratches his head, thinking this is going to be troublesome. Inside the ship's dining room, our protagonist silently watches his sister eat. He thinks he can take care of her while also carrying out his mission. Suddenly, a group of soldiers enters, announcing that they are looking for a noble killer. They offer 10 gold pieces to anyone who can provide information about the assassin who killed Count Ravel. Madeline notices our protagonist tense up and wonders if he was responsible. Before he can answer, a soldier approaches them and asks why they are heading to the capital. Our protagonist calmly explains that they are simply traveling and then adds that they are both newlyweds on their honeymoon. The soldier senses his nervousness and is about to interrogate him further when, suddenly, the ship begins to shake violently. As soon as they reach the deck, they see the cause. A serpent-like creature, identified as a rockwell. Just as the crew begins to use countermeasures, the rockwell knocks them aside. Seeing this, the soldiers start to think they are doomed. Meanwhile, as our protagonist evades the creature, he explains that rockwells only become aggressive when a ship enters their territory. He knows he can easily scare it away using lightning, but doing so would immediately make him the prime suspect in Count Ravel's murder. In other words, he needs to find another way to resolve the situation without raising suspicion. He attacks one of the monster's known weak points, but is surprised to find that its skin is incredibly thick. As a result, the rockwell tosses him through the air as he tries to devise a new plan. Meanwhile, the soldiers try to escape using a lifeboat. Our protagonist realizes that if this continues, the ship will sink in no time, so he jumps into the sea. He observes that no one can see him now. This is the perfect opportunity to use his power. As the sea beast lunges at him, he prepares his lightning and, just like that, attacks the rockwell, aiming at its previous weak point. The creature immediately retreats. Surfacing, our protagonist reveals another fact about rockwells. Since they are known to be proud creatures, they will eventually seek a way to vent their wounded pride. Unfortunately for the escaping soldiers, they become the creature's next target. Meanwhile, our protagonist manages to return to the ship safely. His little sister immediately hugs him while playfully calling him husband. The girl is clearly looking for trouble. She even jokes that this is a way to start their honeymoon. Still, our protagonist is celebrated by the others, but the poor guy is completely exhausted. However, he hasn't forgotten his main mission. Once he reaches the city, the heads of the nobles are going to roll. We finally arrive at Lutetia, the majestic capital of Gaia. Unsurprisingly, our protagonist's sister is filled with excitement as she gazes at the beautiful scenery. In contrast, our protagonist is not enthusiastic at all. After all, he has lived most of his life in this very place. His little sister asks him why he seems so indifferent, but as usual, he gives no explanation. After getting off the ship, our protagonist calmly walks while his sister acts like a complete country bumpkin. He takes her to a fancy inn and suggests she handle the reservation while he takes care of his own business. Madeline immediately stops him and asks for money. Our protagonist tosses her the gold coins the soldiers left on the ship. Seeing the amount, his little sister thinks they could practically buy the whole street. Our protagonist can only silently shake his head. She has no idea how expensive everything is here. Still, he waves her off, insisting she handle everything and reminding her not to spend carelessly. She agrees to buy only the essentials, while our protagonist wonders if he should worry about her. As he walks on, our protagonist explains the enrollment process. People like him are called the chosen ones, but enrollment is not straightforward. A large number of people gather to sign up, many believing they have awakened powers. A man steps forward and demonstrates electrical abilities. Immediately, the soldiers watching the process intervene. Our protagonist explains that some people try to cheat their way in. This man used Arcanite to fake his power, and as a result, he gets beaten. Our protagonist further explains that passing the test usually comes with a monetary reward. That's why many people try to cheat and run away once they get the money. Finally, it's our protagonist's turn. The guard hopes he won't act like the previous guy. Our protagonist simply responds by forming a skull with his red lightning. A bit startled, the soldier acknowledges that he has passed and tells him to proceed inside. Our protagonist expected to pass, but he didn't imagine it would be so easy. The soldier also notes that his performance has intimidated the other candidates, as they now hesitate to step forward. As he walks down the hall, our protagonist notices that, unlike in his previous life, the examiners didn't ask questions about his awakening. However, he suddenly stops upon hearing a familiar voice. Just by his reaction, we can already guess who it is. Silas approaches him, mentioning that his admission form fell. As he hands it back, Silas politely introduces himself and comments that our protagonist seems new. Our protagonist does not respond. Silas is puzzled by the lack of reaction, unaware that our protagonist is clenching his fists so hard they are starting to bleed. Trying to calm himself, our protagonist apologizes, saying he felt a bit unwell. Smiling, Silas says it's normal and considers it a side effect of the awakening. With that, he leaves, hoping to meet him again. However, he becomes furious at letting him go. Suddenly, he lashes out at Silas with his sword. Silas reacts instantly, blocking the attack. After the clash, both take a step back. Just as it seems they are about to fight again, an instructor suddenly appears between them. He applauds their fighting spirit, commenting on how eager they are to use their powers. Octavio Grimaldi, the combat instructor, remarks that there is nothing better than forging a friendship through the clash of swords. After introducing himself, he tells them to relax, adding that they will have plenty of time to practice during his class. Our protagonist remembers Grimaldi. He was a key figure in the Liberation Order, one of the people responsible for killing him in the future. Meanwhile, Silas smiles as usual and apologizes to Professor Grimaldi, explaining that they have just awakened their powers and find them difficult to control. He then also apologizes to our protagonist, in case he somehow offended him, and says he hopes to see him in class. If we think our protagonist is foolish, he agrees and admits it as well. He realizes his mistake in letting his emotions get the better of him and decides to remain calm. Otherwise, he might lose his chance to kill Silas. He also notes that Silas is stronger than he expected, which means he needs to find a way to discover what he is really up to. Throughout all this, someone has been watching everything from the shadows. The mysterious figure comments that both our protagonist and Silas show great potential and decides that their loyalty must be tested. However, he doubts that either of them will survive. We are taken to the Noble Academy, and today is finally the first day of classes. During this period, our protagonist dedicated time to personal training. Although he is not as strong as he used to be in his previous life, this level is enough for now. In short, he is much stronger than anyone within his current level. Still, he must be careful so that no one, especially Silas, discovers his true strength. The next scene takes us to the combat class. As expected, Professor Grimaldi is eager to be their tutor. After his introduction, he points out that the class will really begin once he assesses each person's strength. He can already see that some are eager and have the build of warriors, while others, let's say, are not cut out for combat. Our protagonist catches the hint and immediately remembers what happened in his previous life. Back then, there was an accident in which an old man died because his body couldn't withstand the electrical current. This is because every year, dozens of newly awakened people enter the academy to master their powers. However, the nobles employ a hidden system to keep the newly awakened in check. Professor Grimaldi announces that it's time to begin. As expected, the first person he points to is our protagonist. He steps forward and introduces himself, which leads Professor Grimaldi to remember him as the student who was eager to fight on enrollment day. The professor explains that he likes students like him and reveals that he has brought the perfect candidate to test him. Suddenly, a massive lightning bolt strikes the area. The person who appears is Erwin de Saxe, the mysterious figure from the previous chapter. Erwin is the eldest of the de Saxe family. The de Saxe family are the first awakened and tyrants who control the empire from the shadows, the same people who killed him in his previous life. Although Isaac hates them with every fiber of his being, he knows his current self is no match for Erwin, nor can he take unnecessary risks that might ruin his plan. Using his head, Isaac invents an excuse. He admits that he can be impulsive at times, but he is not foolish enough to go up against someone like Erwin, who is obviously much stronger than him. Amused, the professor comments that it's no wonder that with people like him around, Count Ravel ended up dead. Still, he suggests that Erwin choose an opponent. Erwin replies that no one here interests him. Irritated, he adds that this year's generation is pathetic and weak. What annoys him even more is the fact that one of them is a frail old man. To calm his irritation, Erwin orders that the old man be brought forward. Two first-year students immediately grab him and drag him forward. Isaac asks what is happening, but soon realizes Erwin's intention. In the original timeline, things didn't happen this way. Still, before the duel begins, Professor Grimaldi gives the rules. Both parties must not hold back, but at the same time, they must avoid causing lasting injuries. Our protagonist sees through his words. Normally, newly awakened people cannot summon much electricity. However, the descendants of nobles, especially the de Saxe family, are different. Their powers are awakened from childhood, and they have already reached a high level of mastery. The moment the signal is given, Erwin activates his lightning, telling the old man to prepare, and adds that the weak are not allowed in the academy. Seeing this, our protagonist instinctively steps forward. As a result, he is hit by Erwin's lightning. Fortunately, his training allows him to withstand it. Erwin seems impressed. Professor Grimaldi begins to applaud. Impressed, he points out that both men have demonstrated what it means to be warriors. However, he adds that they are still weak, as they were unable to respond to Erwin's attack. Although Erwin intentionally held back, he assigns them to Class D and mentions that they might advance later. While this seems like bad news for the others, for our protagonist it is perfect. Class D is the weakest and lowest ranked, meaning he won't be bothered by Erwin nor by the de Saxe family's lackeys. However, one of the students becomes furious. He tells Erwin that our protagonist, by interrupting the duel, has stained Erwin's honor and insists that he should be punished. In response, Erwin asks Ezequiel if a fly can stain a man's honor. What he means is that someone like him shouldn't worry about someone as insignificant as our protagonist. The next scene takes us to the academy cafeteria. Amidst the conversations, our protagonist notices that no one wants to associate with the old man, as it is normal in the academy for the weak to be treated as outcasts. This leads him to reflect on his previous life. He realizes that he was almost the same back then. He constantly pursued power, doing everything he could alongside Silas to reach Class A. Class A is reserved only for nobles who have honed their skills since childhood. Finally, he managed to enter Class A, which became his ticket to the high nobility and also one step closer to destroying the de Saxe family from within. However, thinking about his original approach, our protagonist now believes it was naive. This time he is forming a different plan. Seated, Isaac starts a conversation by introducing himself and asking the old man's name. The old man first apologizes, explaining that he is a monk and is under a vow of silence. Since our protagonist saved him, he reveals that his name is Sheen, before returning to his silence. Our protagonist thinks about how favorable this is. If he associates with someone like Sheen, everyone in the class will naturally avoid him, meaning he won't have to worry about being watched. This will also allow him to gather as much information as possible about the de Saxe family and their allies, helping him understand how they managed to outmatch him in his previous life. However, his train of thought is interrupted when he hears a familiar voice. When he looks up, he freezes for a moment, surprised to see his sister. He immediately demands to know what she is doing there. It turns out his little sister follows him wherever he goes. She responds immediately. She asks him if he knows how expensive things are in the capital. After all, someone has to take care of the bills. Our protagonist understands her point, but still wonders why she chose to work precisely at the academy. At that moment, Ezequiel intervenes, furious and falsely accusing our protagonist of harassing a staff member. Already irritated by his earlier stunt in the combat class, he now sees the perfect excuse to confront him. Some students start murmuring, sensing that things are about to get ugly for our protagonist. Our protagonist can only grit his teeth. He already knows that scumbag has had it out for him since the combat orientation. But he never imagined the guy would follow him here and twist a simple conversation with his sister into something completely different. Ezequiel approaches with fury in his eyes, telling our protagonist that this is not his village. Our protagonist listens as the idiot claims that there are rules at the academy that he must follow. Furthermore, he reminds him that currently our protagonist is nobody. That's why his badge is empty. He tells him that even if he eventually manages to acquire a drop of blood and become a noble, that wouldn't change the fact that he is of impure blood. Finally, the narration reveals Ezequiel's full name. Ezequiel de Normandy, the youngest son of the Normandy house, an A-rank noble family and one of the closest allies of the de Saxe family. Before things continue, we are given context about the high-ranking nobles and the high nobility. Our protagonist explains that it is just a title they granted themselves, probably because they awakened their powers from childhood. Moreover, they already enjoy privileges even before entering the academy. The drop of blood is proof of their high rank. As for those of impure blood, they are those who only awaken later and enter the academy to learn to master their abilities. In simple terms, nobles like Ezekiel despise people like them. Knowing this, and for the sake of his future plans, Isaac is already in the process of apologizing when Ezekiel suddenly attacks him. He asks our protagonist who gave him permission to speak. Everyone in the hall watches in silence. Then Ezekiel gives him permission to speak. So our protagonist begins to beg, asking the guy to let him go. However, something seems strange to Ezekiel. Apparently, the moment he threw his punch, Isaac completely dodged it. There isn't even a trace of impact. That discovery bothers him. He realizes that Isaac must have applied a layer of lightning to his body during the attack. Isaac tries to quickly explain that it wasn't intentional, but Ezekiel takes it as a provocation. In his mind, this confirms that Isaac needs to be taught a lesson. Our protagonist wonders if this is really going to turn into a fight. Suddenly, Ezekiel disappears. The next instant, a punch imbued with lightning sends Isaac flying backward. Isaac withstands the blow, but immediately realizes how strong that guy is. He is forced to use all his power just to defend himself. But what comes next is shocking. Even concentrating fully on defense, he realizes he is still not strong enough. Ezekiel continues to overwhelm him. Now Ezekiel starts mocking him. Isaac is slammed into a wall, cracking it from the impact. He didn't expect Ezekiel to be so powerful. Ezekiel approaches, impressed that he is still conscious. He tells everyone to look, claiming that this is the difference between the high nobility and impure blood like them. And so Ezekiel continues the beating. Our protagonist is completely humiliated. Still, Ezekiel doesn't stop. The attack continues until Isaac can barely stand. Just as Ezekiel prepares to deliver the final blow, Madeline intervenes, begging him to stop. She admits that it was her fault and that our protagonist should not be punished for it. Ezekiel pauses for a moment. After looking at her more closely, his interest is piqued. Then he surprises everyone by suggesting that she take Isaac's place. Taking her by the hand, Ezekiel tells our protagonist that he should be grateful because his sister just saved his life. As he leads her away, he adds that they are going to have some fun. Our protagonist can only watch helplessly as his sister is taken away before losing consciousness. In the past, he left her behind because he was consumed by vengeance. And because of him, she was abused by aldermen and the count's men. Suddenly, our protagonist wakes up screaming. He immediately demands that Sheen tell him where his sister is. Someone tells him not to bother, reminding him that Sheen is under a vow of silence. Turning to a familiar voice, our protagonist is stunned to see Silas. Of course, he immediately becomes furious. Still, Silas is a bit surprised that he is still alive, noting that he was unconscious for a day and was quite badly injured. Isaac demands to know about Madeline. Silas sits down and explains that she returned to her post. He admits he doesn't know exactly what Ezekiel did to her, but with the high nobility, nothing is certain. To them, commoners are nothing more than disposable pawns. Still, Silas tells him that he should be grateful to be alive. It was all thanks to his sister. But Silas, mid-statement, notices that Isaac's expression changes. Burning with rage and hatred, our protagonist swears that the first noble family he will destroy is Ezekiel's, and with him the Normandy house. The next scene takes us to the Normandy family estate. Ezekiel is pleased to see that Madeline arrives just in time once again. He points out that he is going to cause her trouble, but still counts on her to help him clean. Our protagonist's sister can only accept, gritting her teeth. Ezekiel leads her inside while expressing his appreciation for her, keeping his indulgence a secret. The next morning, our protagonist walks with his sister. Throughout the conversation, Madeline insists that Ezekiel didn't do anything to her. She explains that the guy simply calls her every now and then just to show off in front of his friends. When our protagonist asks if that's all, she repeats what she said before, insisting that nothing happened to her. To make matters worse, she reminds him that guy once humiliated him, so she can immediately tell if she's being hit or abused. In response, our protagonist explains that he was simply worried and wanted to make sure Ezekiel wasn't hurting her. A little annoyed, she recalls the last time he was the one who needed to be rescued. Instead of worrying about her, he should focus more on his classes. Because once her older brother becomes a noble, she plans to spend all his money. With that, she leaves our protagonist behind as he stands there thinking. He can tell that his sister is trying to hide her suffering. However, it's only a matter of time before he takes care of Ezekiel. Later, at the academy, our protagonist attends lightning training. The students in Class D keep missing the target, which infuriates the instructor. Elise de Sinclair scolds them, saying that this Class D group is worse than defective. In the midst of her frustration, she glances slightly and notices our protagonist helping the old man. Our protagonist is a little startled when Professor Elise approaches him. He politely corrects her by introducing himself properly. However, she ignores him and keeps calling him Alec, suggesting that he should show the class his skill, which obviously angers our protagonist. Anyway, she asks him if he can hit the farthest target. Everyone in Ezequiel's class wonders if that's even possible for their level. Our protagonist can only sigh inwardly. In his past life, he was a powerhouse capable of hitting all targets with his eyes closed. Although he notes the limitations of his current body, he can still do at least this. With that, he activates his lightning power and his bolt strikes the target. Elise is impressed that someone has finally managed to hit the target. However, she gets furious when she realizes that the students weren't paying attention and instead are focused on the protagonist. Meanwhile, Silas watches everything and smiles. He leaves, commenting that our protagonist has potential. Shortly after, Professor Elise approaches our protagonist again. She points out that if it weren't for his poor performance against Ezequiel, she might have considered promoting him to Class C. She still addresses him as Alec, which makes him wonder if she's doing it on purpose. Still, she insists that he must not get ahead of himself, adding that he's only the biggest tadpole in a tiny pond. Our protagonist remembers this professor from his previous life. She was part of the Liberation Order, responsible for his death and that of his comrades. Although he hates anyone associated with the Order and the de Saxe family, he knows she's right. There's a huge gap between pure blood and impure blood like him. To reach that level of power, he would have to train his body for at least 10 years just to get near Irwin's level. But fortunately, he already knows a way to close that gap in a single day. Once again, our protagonist reflects on the high nobility. As already known, they use awakening pills to awaken their lightning power. However, he also notes that they continue consuming these pills to further increase their lightning power. Still, these pills aren't enough, as they only partially activate the brain region responsible for controlling lightning. So to gain complete control, the nobles created the emulation machine. This device unleashes the potential of lightning, called the Second Awakening. It's a secret of the high nobility to surpass the impure-blooded. Not even our protagonist, awakened by lightning, stands a chance. Perhaps this is why Ezequiel was able to defeat him so easily. Still, our protagonist needs to find the emulation machine, and as it turns out, he knows where to find one. During the Great War against the Kingdom of Britannia, the Normandy family led the Kingdom of Gallia to victory. The newspaper shows that the Normandy brothers have been called to the front, meaning Ezequiel is completely alone in the mansion. Coincidentally, the Normandy family is part of the A-rank nobility. This means they possess an emulation machine, and our protagonist plans to act tonight. The scene cuts abruptly back to the Normandy estate. Our protagonist appears already knowing the place inside and out. After all, in his past life, after reaching Class A, Ezequiel had invited him and Silas on multiple occasions, so avoiding security is as easy as taking candy from a baby. The only obstacle will be if Ezequiel is awake. When our protagonist checks, what he sees next takes him by surprise. His little sister is being scolded for skipping a spot. Ezequiel warns her that if she doesn't clean properly, she might end up like the other girls. Our protagonist once again lets his emotions get the better of him. He lunges at them. His eyes flash with murderous intent as he moves to finish him off. Ezequiel blocks our protagonist's sword strike and is furious at the interference. Meanwhile, our protagonist strikes again with anger and hatred burning in his eyes. After a few exchanges, Ezequiel is unimpressed. A single attack sends our protagonist flying. Seeing this, Ezequiel mocks him. Then he becomes curious about his relationship with Madeline. Growing increasingly furious, Isaac demands to know how he just referred to his sister. Smiling with amusement, Ezequiel points out his surprise. At first, he thought Isaac was in love with her. Still, he tells our protagonist that he must be proud of his sister. The girl is a tireless worker. He adds that every night she cleans up after his twisted entertainments with other girls, a task he couldn't trust to the household staff. Of course, our protagonist becomes even angrier. While he was busy training every night alone, he never imagined his sister was at the mercy of this beast. When Madeline insists that our protagonist should leave before he gets killed, Ezequiel corrects her, saying he plans to kill them both. Our protagonist realizes that, despite his training, he is still no match for Ezequiel. So he tells his sister to trust him before darting off in an instant. Ezequiel, amused, mocks him for being a coward for running away and leaving her behind. That thought vanishes as soon as he realizes that our protagonist didn't run away but went deeper into the mansion. This can only mean that his main target is the emulation machine. However, Ezequiel refuses to believe that our protagonist even knows of its existence. Just to be sure, he runs toward the emulation machine. Meanwhile, our protagonist, as he runs, thinks to himself that he has been in this mansion many times before. Back then, the Normandy family always held banquets and spent the entire night showing off their emulation machine. Finally, our protagonist locates where the machine is. Furious, Ezekiel yells at him, calling him an impure bastard. However, our protagonist ignores him and enters the machine, setting it to maximum power. Seeing this, Ezekiel is shocked and demands to know how our protagonist even knows about the machine. Ezekiel's attempts to stop him are useless. Our protagonist tells him it's too late, because now he has finally experienced his first and only second awakening. And yes, he can feel his lightning power increasing exponentially. Seeing this, Ezekiel calls him a bastard for defiling his family's machine. Summoning his avatar, he yells at Isaac, saying that even if he has increased his power, it will take him years to master his avatar. Then he attacks, destroying the machine and screaming that our protagonist must die. Unfortunately, it's already too late. Ezekiel's mind cannot process what's happening, because now our protagonist has fully summoned his avatar, the very soul of his awakening, which connects his brain to his heart. And as the protagonist, his current power knows no limits. Finally, we've reached the part we've been waiting for. A single blow from our protagonist's avatar sends Ezekiel flying and crashing outside the property. Ezekiel still can't believe what's happening. Our protagonist coldly tells him that he's not done yet, and so the two begin to fight. Ezekiel mocks our protagonist, saying it will take more than that to kill him. Our protagonist expected him to say that. After exchanging a few moves, our protagonist takes the advantage. Now it's his turn to mock him, asking why Ezekiel isn't laughing anymore. Our protagonist has barely broken a sweat, while Ezekiel is desperately struggling to resist, though he remains arrogant. Now is when our protagonist reveals something interesting and surprising. He explains that a lightning user's avatar feeds on emotions. So now, with everything he has endured and suffered at the hands of the nobles, both in his past life and the present, his hatred and anger are on another level. The author has just given the best possible power-up to someone with anger issues. Now it makes sense why our protagonist is so impulsive and unable to control his emotions. At this point, any clown or troll who tries to provoke him with rage is completely finished. Anyway, Ezekiel is surprised by this outcome, and worse yet, he has run out of energy. In response, our protagonist's avatar punches him directly in the face, as if it were a face preventing a beating. Our protagonist then unleashes a JoJo-style flurry of punches. After the smoke clears, our protagonist steps forward and tells the fool that, like before, he didn't want any trouble. After taking care of Ezekiel, our protagonist leaves the Normandy family estate with his sister. We jump to the next morning at the Noble Academy. The news of Ezekiel's death is a topic of conversation among everyone at the academy. Amid the rumors, our protagonist remains calm since he managed to return with his sister in time before they discovered Ezekiel's body. Moreover, his situation is favorable, even if an investigation were to take place. Who would suspect that a D-rank student killed Ezekiel? Moments after his reflection, Silas approaches our protagonist and comments on the sudden meeting. Shortly after, he tells him that someone killed Ezekiel. Our protagonist reacts with genuine surprise the moment he hears this. In his mind, he knows that Silas probably revealed this news to him personally just to test him. After all, in his previous life, Silas was a master strategist, basically a brain in planning how to infiltrate the de Saxe family. With this in mind, our protagonist carefully chooses his response when Silas mentions that the person who killed Ezekiel must have been his equal. Isaac expresses some doubt. After all, Ezekiel was in Class A and wasn't weak, so he assumes it must be the work of a British spy. His theory is valid, considering the Normandy family is currently fighting over there. Silas agrees, but points out that he feels someone must have known about Ezekiel's death since he had too many enemies. Our protagonist doesn't respond. It seems that expression gave him away. Smiling, Silas reassures him, noting that it's impossible for someone from Class D to have been involved in Ezekiel's death. At this point, Isaac is sure that Silas knows something. Still, Silas leaves, commenting that Ezekiel deserved to die before insisting that Isaac check on Madeline. Isaac doesn't like the way Silas mentions his sister. Just then, Professor Grimaldi orders silence in the hallway. He announces to the students what they already know. Another instructor intervenes, saying that Ezekiel's killer is still at large and dangerous, and urges the students to stay vigilant. The instructor is Claire de Jordan, responsible for discipline. When she mentions Ezekiel's death as the work of the enemy nation, Britannia, Professor Grimaldi becomes furious, calling them cowards. He swears to find the culprit and repay blood with blood. Later that same day in the bustling city, our protagonist walks with his sister as usual. Suddenly, the Knights of Gaia begin announcing the presence of British assassins. Upon hearing that the knights are offering 100 gold coins for information, his sister jokes about turning him in. Our protagonist looks at a poster. Apparently, they're calling him the noble killer. He smiles as a malicious idea forms in his mind. He can use this to his advantage. As soon as they get home, Isaac opens his bag, revealing a large amount of arcanite. Madeline, stunned, asks him how and where he got such a quantity. He explains that he took it from the Normandy family estate. After explaining the usefulness of arcanite, Madeline gets angry. She suspects that her brother is planning something dangerous. Isaac tries to explain, pointing out that he can't reveal everything, but there's a secret room in the academy that he needs to enter. Madeline tells him not to say anything more. She already knows that this is the part where he'll claim to come from the future, which makes her a little uncomfortable. Still, he tells her that he knows a way to become stronger much faster, and if it works, it will help him become a noble much sooner. Hearing this, Madeline becomes interested, and Isaac seizes the opportunity to ask for her help. Before she can continue rambling about how she'll spend his money, our protagonist hands her a list of items she needs to get. Meanwhile, he plans to make the most of the arcanite. Outside, Madeline looks at the list. The items seem like something from a science project. However, the clever girl has her own plans. She hopes her brother won't mind if she buys a few things for herself. Isaac's list includes mercury, a conductor, and other materials whose purpose she doesn't understand. She concludes that her brother has completely lost his mind. Returning to our protagonist, his thoughts reveal his original plan. Initially, he intended to wait for the end-of-year ceremony when security is usually more relaxed. That was when he planned to enter the secret room. But now, thanks to Ezequiel's death, the city is on edge, meaning the security forces will be distracted. This is the perfect time to infiltrate the secret room. As for the arcanite, its use is already known. Still, Isaac explains that in the future, a discovery will reveal a better use of arcanite to accelerate power. For now, people use arcanite in chunks, but later they will refine it into fragments to increase discharge efficiency and improve lightning control. With his preparations ready, Isaac goes into special operations mode. With his second awakening and his armor, he is currently unstoppable. The next scene takes us to the Noble Academy. Inside, students are seen complaining about Professor Grimaldi's classes. Suddenly, our protagonist descends like lightning. The students are shocked the moment the dust settles and they see him. Next, our protagonist destroys a wall with lightning. Because of this, a student thinks he is the noble killer, the one who killed Ezequiel. With that, everyone runs out of the building. Shortly after, 3 figures enter the hall. They turn out to be Professor Grimaldi, Elise, and Erwin. Professor Grimaldi thinks our protagonist can't have gone far and tells them to search the entire building, adding that he wants the noble killer alive. Meanwhile, our protagonist has already escaped using the ventilation ducts. Inside, he reveals that his plan was to create a distraction in the North Wing. Since he knows the Noble Academy like the back of his hand, the professors will be busy searching for him there. While he uses the ventilation ducts to head to the South Wing, his main target, because that's where he'll find the secret room. As expected, the place is completely empty. Now all he has to do is get through the door. The door leads to Professor Elise's office. As a result of the commotion he caused, she is nowhere to be seen. Isaac remembers that in his past life he had heard about the secret room, but had never seen it in person. He notices that the passage is hidden behind one of the books on the shelf. However, he didn't expect the key to open the passage to be the Kama Sutra, which leads him to call Professor Elise a pervert. Anyway, the passage is revealed and leads to the basement. Our protagonist explains that this is the Academy's hidden sanctuary. Apparently, this is where the high nobility hold their meetings and schemes, and perhaps here he will find clues about how he was supposed to be killed in the future. As he walks through the room, a document on the table catches his attention. Our protagonist is momentarily surprised. The document contains information about Silas Montfort. Along with others, however, before he can do anything else, someone enters the hidden chamber, pointing out that they suspect the killer wasn't a spy. Professor Jordan enters calmly, stating that the high nobility has many enemies. Our protagonist didn't expect anyone to show up, and it had to be her of all people. Professor Jordan explains that she tried to talk to Professor Grimaldi, but the man wouldn't listen. She thinks it's ridiculous that a spy from an enemy nation would kill a high-ranking noble. Unlike scum like our protagonist, Britannia has decency and would never resort to such tactics. Saying this, she suddenly hurls a lightning bolt at our protagonist. Seeing his reaction, she taunts him, asking if he doesn't plan to defend himself or if he's afraid of alerting the other professors to his location. Professor Jordan recognizes that our protagonist killed Ezequiel, But unfortunately for him, when it comes to close-quarters combat, she lunges forward, noting that she is virtually invincible. Our protagonist dodges her moves, noticing how fast she is. When a strike comes close to his face, he blocks it with his sword. Professor Jordan expresses surprise that our protagonist is wielding Arknight. Our protagonist doesn't respond. Instead, he slashes and forces her back. Seeing this, Professor Jordan resorts to provoking him again. Our protagonist wonders what he can do. He can't use his avatar now because it would destroy the crypt and alert the professors. As the fight continues, our protagonist analyzes each of her attacks and realizes that she is intentionally holding back the electrical discharge in every sword strike. In other words, Professor Jordan is also deliberately restraining herself. Our protagonist decides to use this to his advantage. He finally speaks, asking if she is also holding back because she fears collapsing the crypt. When our protagonist mentions this, she scoffs, asking if he wants her to believe he's a student while he attacks her and demanding to know how he found out about this place. Our protagonist replies that he did his own research. Therefore, he declares that he will show Professor Jordan something she has never seen before. Professor Jordan realizes that our protagonist is about to summon his avatar. She yells at him, asking if he's an idiot, warning that his avatar will bring the whole place down. Our protagonist simply ignores her, pointing out that her warning comes a bit late. When our protagonist manages to summon his avatar, Professor Jordan decides to kill him before the crypt is destroyed. Meanwhile, our protagonist exhales and sinks into his inner world. Inside that space, he comes face to face with a mysterious hooded figure. In the midst of his meditation, a creature tries to attack him. However, a compressed form of his avatar suddenly appears and knocks it down, sending it flying through the air. Then the figure speaks, addressing our protagonist by name. He explains that he has mastered the secret technique of the clan and that he did well to come find him. The man then decides to make our protagonist his new disciple. Emerging from his inner world, our protagonist uses a technique called compendium, a technique of avatar compression. This causes his avatar to shrink at a visible rate. Seeing this, Professor Jordan lunges at him. Suddenly, she is blocked and momentarily stunned. She can't understand what she's seeing because, yes, our protagonist's avatar has just compressed and now appears as a summon straight out of solo leveling. Professor Jordan asks incredulously how this is even possible. Our protagonist tells her that if she weren't so arrogant, he wouldn't have minded showing her because there are countless avatar techniques in his realm. Professor Jordan curses and becomes furious after feeling insulted. She lunges at our protagonist once more, but this time the avatar steps forward and blocks her. She can tell that the avatar is incredibly fast. Therefore, she decides to go all out. Finally, she begins to lose her composure since she can't even defeat the avatar. Our protagonist realizes that she is blinded by rage and must be stopped before she completely destroys the place. As she continues to fight the avatar, our protagonist makes his move. He deactivates the avatar by reciting "Replace." The avatar suddenly disappears, leaving Professor Jordan in shock. In her confusion, she suddenly notices our protagonist above her, ready to strike. Consequently, his attack lands and she fails to block in time. Falling to her knees, she asks through gritted teeth who he really is. Our protagonist doesn't respond. Instead, he looks at her with murderous intent in his eyes and states that he will be the one asking questions. Professor Jordan is visibly shaken, so our protagonist begins by asking what they wanted with Silas Montfort. She responds defiantly, saying that she knows that the moment she speaks, he will kill her. However, our protagonist interrupts and promises that if she speaks, he won't kill her. She looks at him for a moment. After a brief contemplation, she agrees to reveal everything. As usual, everything leads back to the de Saxe family, the leaders of the high nobility. They fear that their power will be undermined by the impure-blooded, who are the future nobles at the academy. Since they can't kill them outright, they allow them to ascend to nobility. In fact, they even let them become powerful and increase in number until the time comes to eliminate them. This operation is what Professor Jordan calls the Purge. Our protagonist's eyes widen. Surprised to hear this, he demands that she continue. So Professor Jordan explains further. Once every 50 years, the de Saxe family eliminates impure-blooded nobles, rivals, and rebels. Since they can't kill them in broad daylight, they orchestrate events and sow seeds of rebellion within their territories. That's when the Liberation Order comes into play, using chaos as a pretext of justice to eliminate them. Our protagonist reflects and realizes that this is exactly what happened to him. On the day of his execution, the people revolted, leading to the execution of the king and the rest of the high-ranking nobles who opposed the de Saxe family. However, Professor Jordan isn't finished yet. She adds that to ensure the purge goes smoothly, they select a student early in the academy. That person in 20 years will be the one to carry out the next purge, and that person will be Silas Montfort. Then, our protagonist asks about the remaining two students. Professor Claire de Jordan explains that, like Silas, they are candidates who could become champions and eventually lead the purge. Our protagonist seems to have gotten what he wanted, so he tells her that this time he will ensure that the pure-blooded and the de Saxe family's plans don't turn out as they imagine. With that, he says goodbye to Professor Jordan. The moment she thinks our protagonist has let his guard down, she lunges at him, calling him an idiot for turning his back on her. Our protagonist simply shakes his head. His avatar suddenly materializes and finishes the job. When our protagonist expresses regret for having killed her, she asks him what he means. He doesn't respond, but his thoughts reveal the reason. Apparently, he knows her personality. She is a foot soldier of the de Saxe family, loyal to the core. Even throughout the entire confrontation, he never planned to spare her. The next scene jumps to several days later at the Noble Academy. During this time, our protagonist has been watching Silas. Furthermore, the entire atmosphere of the academy has changed since Professor Claire de Jordan died. The high-ranking nobles now know that he can attack and kill at any moment. Despite the tension, Silas, on the other hand, seems to be enjoying himself. Our protagonist reflects on Silas's earlier words about Ezequiel's death and believes that, at this moment, Silas still hates the pure-blooded. Although he admits he has no idea what made him change in the future, he also doesn't understand why the high-ranking nobles would choose an impure-blooded like Silas as a champion. Now, our protagonist begins to feel curious about him. After watching him for a while, our protagonist notices a big problem. His sister is very much in love with Silas. For him, it's frustrating to watch. At the same time, Silas seems to reciprocate his little sister's flirting, which angers the girls at the academy. Just as they delve deeper into their conversation, our protagonist suddenly appears, interrupting them. Madeline is furious inside at his antics and decides to leave, while both boys watch her go. Silas misinterprets the situation and thinks our protagonist is in love with her. Before our protagonist can clarify things, Silas leaves, noting that jealousy can be a bad thing. Our protagonist is left speechless. The next day, our protagonist reviews his findings. We already know the 3 potential candidates to lead the purge. Our protagonist has had no luck with Silas, even after following him for weeks. However, the other 2 are different. Both are pure-blooded from Class A. The girl is Professor Elise de Sinclair's daughter, and her name is Jean. The other is Arthur de Jussieu, whose family controls the black market in the capital. Our protagonist believes both descendants are scum and knows they will become pillars of the liberation order. Therefore, he turns his attention to them, as he needs to gather more information before the next purge in 20 years. Since he's at it, it would also be a good opportunity to cut off a few noble heads. His train of thought is interrupted by 2 students calling out to him. Our protagonist recognizes them as his classmates, Milo and Bastian. He explains that after his recent exploit at the academy, a new rule was created. Students must move in groups. This is to prevent the noble killer from attacking them. His friends complain about Professor Grimaldi's class, but our protagonist insists they shouldn't worry. The guys then get playful, mentioning the noble killer. Our protagonist really enjoys being with Milo and Bastian. Just then, Milo mentions a party that Arthur is throwing. Our protagonist clearly hears this for the first time, so Milo explains that Arthur will host a party the following night, and even more surprising, he's inviting impure-blooded. Our protagonist's expression darkens as he realizes what's happening. In the original timeline, Arthur only invited them to humiliate them and make a statement. He even remembers that some students were mutilated, while others didn't make it out alive. Speaking of which, Arthur appears, greeting them casually with 2 girls at his side and asking what they're talking about. Bastian tenses up seeing him, while Milo explains that they were just talking about his party. Arthur takes this as a sign to personally invite our protagonist, saying it will be the best party. Handing him a card, he insists that he must not be late. Then he leaves, hoping to see them all there. While his 2 friends chat excitedly, our protagonist looks at the address and notices it's located in a dangerous area of the capital. Both friends are surprised when he insists they shouldn't attend the party. He reminds them of their place. They are not the high nobility. Milo seems to agree, saying that since they aren't nobles, they must remember that they are currently the weakest and lowest class. Our protagonist is left speechless, seeing that Milo thinks they will remain in Class D forever. Meanwhile, a girl seems to be silently watching our protagonist. The next scene begins on the day of the party. Before our protagonist heads there to carry out his mission, he decides to try something. Entering a room, our protagonist notices the test wall in front of him. Striking the arcanite in the center measures a student's power. Gathering all his strength, our protagonist decides to discover his true power. After striking the wall, the arcanite lights up immediately, and his lightning begins to spread through the cracks in the wall. The wall has letters indicating the class level. Finally, our protagonist's lightning reaches A, meaning he is finally on par with the A-rank nobles. Combining this with his 20 years of experience, he is sure he can face Arthur. Before going to ruin the party, something catches his attention. Turning around, our protagonist can't believe it. It's Erwin de Sax's nameplate. Basically, this guy's power level is on an entirely different level from Class A. This reflects the saying that there is always someone more dangerous out there. However, our protagonist decides to focus on him later. For now, his main target is to face Arthur. Our protagonist watches the party from afar and can see that Arthur is really having a good time. Just then, our protagonist shows an expression of doubt at what he's seeing. Apparently, his two friends ignored his warning and still attended the party. Our protagonist doesn't understand why they decided to go. But it's not their fault, considering they have no idea what's going to happen to them. He also sees Erwin, and that guy is really strong. Our protagonist thinks he doesn't need to worry about him interfering. Shortly after, our protagonist's ticket finally arrives. As the person walks through the alley, our protagonist suddenly grabs him. After immobilizing the guy, our protagonist explains that he is actually Arthur's personal drug dealer, Buho. Just by putting on the mask, our protagonist believes he can enter the party without raising suspicion. As expected, the guards let him through and tell him where he can find Arthur. Once inside, our protagonist sees how lively the party is. As he makes his way toward Arthur, he knows he can't waste time. Just then, Gina calls out to him. She smiles kindly and asks him if he has something for her. Our protagonist is glad he came prepared. After giving her a pill, she notices that he's less talkative today. Anyway, she pats him on the chest and thanks him. Our protagonist is a little worried that she might discover his armor. Instead of being surprised, she jokes about him wearing a chest plate, adding that no one plans to hurt him. After saying that, she leaves, hoping that Owl doesn't get into trouble. Our protagonist finally breathes a sigh of relief and decides to look for Arthur. He's walking down the hall when he suddenly hears Arthur's voice. So our protagonist opens the door and finds Arthur wearing the Liberation Order armor. Both Milo and Bastian are being harassed, and Bastian has lost his hand. Our protagonist is literally speechless at what's happening. Meanwhile, one of Arthur's friends comments that he's gone a bit too far. To maintain his reputation, one suggests getting rid of Milo and Bastian. However, Arthur is too high on drugs to even listen. The moment he sees our protagonist, he gets excited and tells Owl that since he's come, he should give him his best products. He adds that Owl is the best and that he just wants to have a good time. When our protagonist stays silent, Arthur wonders if he's impressed to see him in the silver armor. Meanwhile, in our protagonist's thoughts, his mind replays the final moments caused by the people who wore that armor. Arthur is so excited that he reveals that the armor is actually a prototype. The fool even reveals the plans to kill the impure nobles in the future. Turning to Milo and Bastian, Arthur blames them, saying the problem is that they awakened. But our protagonist interrupts him, telling Arthur not to get ahead of himself. Arthur seems confused by the comment. So our protagonist slowly removes his disguise before telling him that he won't see the next day. Even after our protagonist makes his intentions clear, Arthur wonders if he's still hallucinating or if the drugs are just too strong. In response, a terrified member of his group corrects him, saying that this is the noble killer. Our protagonist lunges at Arthur like lightning. At the same time, Arthur grabs Milo and uses him as a shield. Understanding his intentions, our protagonist quickly changes tactics. He needs to create an opportunity for his two friends to escape, so he summons his compressed avatar. Immediately, the avatar appears behind Arthur. Reacting quickly, Arthur pushes Milo aside and activates his own avatar. Thus, the fight begins. However, Arthur's avatar is so massive that it could bring down the entire building. At that moment, our protagonist's avatar disappears. At the same time, our protagonist charges at Arthur. Now Arthur finally understands his plan. Meanwhile, Isaac tells him to hold on tight. With that, he lifts him and literally carries him to the rooftop. Already on the rooftop, Arthur asks if that's his plan to assassinate him. He believes that his friends at the party will join in to help him. Our protagonist simply asks him what he's talking about. For the high-ranking nobles, maintaining their reputation and image is everything. Arthur is surprised to see Erwin quietly leave the party. Isaac tells him to look more closely, pointing out that no noble would want to be found in a place like this. Hearing this, Arthur claims that he no longer needs them because his personal guards can handle it. As he says this, suddenly some men jump from behind him. The moment they land, our protagonist immediately recognizes their armor. Each of the guards wears an Arcanite exoskeleton. Our protagonist points out that this is forbidden technology, as it harms the user. Smiling smugly, Arthur reveals that the exoskeleton connects the Arcanite directly to his nervous system. In other words, our protagonist is practically facing 6 nobles. When the guards attack, our protagonist manages to block them. The rest lunge at him, but he simply dodges and creates distance by jumping into the air. While in the air, he throws some daggers to the ground and then activates his avatar. His avatar charges at one of the guards and crushes him with a massive fist. However, to Isaac's surprise, the man actually raises a barrier. Because of this, he realizes that these are no ordinary guards. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices Arthur's avatar attacking. Our protagonist had almost forgotten about him. Still, he manages to block just in time, sending Arthur flying backward. Seeing this, Arthur mocks him, asking if he thinks he can humiliate him in front of his friends. He declares that once he kills him and presents his head to the de Sax family, not only will all his debts be settled, but he will also become their favorite and the one to lead the purge in the future. Hearing this, Isaac smiles smugly under his mask, noting that, as always, Arthur is getting ahead of himself. He wonders why that idiot never learns. Apparently, the daggers he threw earlier have created some kind of barrier. Our protagonist concentrates, noting that it's been a long time since he last used this technique. Once again, his master appears. He explains that Arcanite is a mineral that feeds on electricity. Interestingly, that electrical charge can be drained. When that happens, the most unstable substance in the world is formed. His master once hoped he would master this technique and become unstoppable. With that, our protagonist activates the technique, speaking the word alteration. Immediately, the barrier activates. Our protagonist begins to absorb the electricity, creating black Arcanite. At the same time, the guards in the Arcanite exoskeletons realize they can no longer move. Now our protagonist uses the ability to suppress all currents. All electrical charges concentrate into a single point, which soon triggers a massive explosion on the rooftop. After the dust settles, our protagonist calmly picks up a sword. Although he sacrificed some daggers, he considers the result worth it. As expected, Arthur manages to survive the explosion. Our protagonist notes that Arthur using his avatar to protect himself at the last second was a smart move. When he mentions that Arthur would have been a great warrior, Arthur panics and begins to beg, thinking that our protagonist wants to kill him. He claims that he is actually a good person and doesn't deserve to die. So our protagonist reminds him that that's not what he saw when Arthur was torturing his classmates. Fortunately for him, our protagonist has no intention of killing him. Instead, he wants Arthur to tell all his high-nobility friends that the noble killer is coming for them because, of course, he's just getting started. However, before leaving, he almost forgets something. Suddenly, our protagonist cuts off one of Arthur's hands. The guy immediately lets out an agonizing scream. The next scene takes us back to the academy. Our protagonist walks down the hall, his mind wandering over the events of the previous day. He concludes that the de Sax family is already moving, sowing the seeds for the liberation order before the next purge. However, Sheen snaps him out of his thoughts and points to the infirmary. Our protagonist thinks to himself that, since he cut off Arthur's hand, not only will Arthur be unable to lead the purge, but he also won't be able to summon his avatar, as it requires both hands. Furthermore, this will automatically make him an outcast among the high-ranking nobles. Additionally, Arthur will likely begin to resent his so-called friends for abandoning him. Anyway, our protagonist has come to see his friends. Seeing him, Bastian mentions that he and Milo won't be attending classes for a while. Sheen silently checks on Milo while Bastian explains that they got into trouble the day before. Turning to Isaac, he apologizes, pointing out that it was his fault for ignoring the warning. However, Isaac tells them it wasn't their fault and suggests that it was probably because of the noble killer. Both friends seem confused. Milo is about to reveal what really happened, but our protagonist stops him. He makes up an excuse, saying that his friend is still in shock. Then he insists that they stick to the official version of the story and both agree. With that settled, our protagonist leaves. Now that Arthur is out of the picture, it means the de Sax family needs to find another candidate, someone who follows orders without question. Our protagonist has been watching Silas, but hasn't found anything suspicious. It's as if the guy has no idea what's going on. This means his next target is Jean de Sinclair. We fast forward a few weeks. During this time, our protagonist has been watching Jean and has identified the safest place to confront her. Just then, his sister catches him off guard. Our protagonist quickly hides what he's doing. Raising an eyebrow, Madeline asks him if he thinks she's stupid. She walks over to a mirror and reveals the weapons and tools he had hidden. Furthermore, she notes that Arthur has been absent from school and wonders if this is her brother's doing. In response, our protagonist tells his little sister not to meddle in his affairs. Hearing this, Madeline admits that she promised not to ask questions. Imitating him, she says that he would probably say the less she knows, the better. In response, Isaac insists that he doesn't talk like that. Even so, his little sister admits that she has discovered something. It has to do with Jean de Sinclair. She asks our protagonist if he's in love since he's been following her non-stop. Our protagonist explains that's not the case and again tells her not to meddle in his affairs. He also reminds her that she's been spending time with Silas. Madeline doesn't deny it and adds that the guy is very handsome. In the middle of their typical sibling banter, someone suddenly starts banging on the door. Both freeze mid-argument, wondering who it could be. The moment our protagonist opens the door, he is completely stunned. The person standing there is Jean, who greets him with a warm smile.